We tabled it.
Brian had to run to a swearing in for Hampshire Women's something. So I had the kids, I was going to tell me, he's like, I'm going downstairs. So I turned that on. I'm like, that's not Elmo. Yeah, no, it's door.
Too close.
There's this. I can use it. All right, so. Here. We'll get started. We have a quorum. We'll make a motion to open the Finance Committee for April 26th at 6:30. All's in favor?
Aye.
All's opposed? Just for housekeeping, Councilor Lopez did just send a message. I will not be able to attend tonight. My apologies. Councilor Leahy said he is leaving Westfield State. He is running just a little behind from a prior meeting, so he'll be here. I have Councilor Linda Vakin, Councilor Tallman, Todd McGee, Councilor Sullivan. And as people come in, we'll update everyone. But with that, we'll try and go through. I know there was an ordinance committee meeting, and there was a charter and rules committee meeting. So people have been here. They're kind of tired. So with that, let's get started. Item number 1, make a motion to move from the table prior minutes of the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We did get those this afternoon. Did everyone have a chance to review them?
Peter?
I did.
Did
If
you
you're
see anything? Are you
Yeah.
comfortable with them?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it.
I saw about half of it.
Yeah.
But if there's no complaints or anything, make a motion.
Make a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion to receive and adopt the minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Item number 2, make a motion to remove from the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Financial transfer request of $14,822.24 from fire and lieutenants to injured on duty. Come on in. Whoever wants to come in, and we'll go over it.
We probably need an
Stand there, you can sit, it's up to you.
Well, I thought I had to use this, so I thought I'd stand.
No, I never said you had to use that. You can come in and sit.
Oh.
Whatever you prefer.
Oh, I prefer to just stand here. I don't expect to be here long.
Oh, just for that, we're going to make a motion to go to item 20. No.
Oh, leave to withdraw.
All right, so what's
Okay.
this one?
You will recall that the City Council recently passed an ordinance requiring.
Yeah, it should be on. I
That's
turned
not
it on.
good.
Yeah.
It's on.
Okay,
Yes.
now it
Maybe
is.
it's not tall enough for me.
Yeah, taller. Can't hear you.
I don't know
Too
how to
good
do
to it.
And at least I'm not shrinking. Okay.
There you go.
Much better.
Okay, now we can hear you.
You will recall that recently the City Council passed an ordinance that says any transfer into a payroll account from number 51101 to 51299 must be approved by the City Council. So these routine transfers for injured on duty now have to come before the City Council. So these are there are actually 3 here, item 2, item 3, and item 5 that have been submitted to you because of that.
Motion to suspend the rules and take up those items as a package.
2, 3, and 5. I was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Item 3 is financial transfer of $10,421.88 from fire lieutenant to injured on duty. And then item 5 is financial transfer request of $1,697.43 from patrolman to overtime parade injured on duty as well.
Yes.
All right, so want to tell us a little about this? I mean, for the audience, I understand it, but
Well, whenever a police officer or firefighter is ill, we are required to pay them out of an account called Injured on Duty so we can keep track of the costs of duty injuries. So we have to transfer money from the regular salary line into this Injured on Duty line so that the expenses can be charged to that account.
Do you know how many we have out injured on duty right now?
On the attachment to each one of the transfers, there's a detailed list. So for the one that's $14,822.24, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 firefighters who are out on injured on duty.
yeah,
Really?
just to let you know, what we have is it just says From firefighters, from lieutenants to injured on duty. It doesn't.
So you don't get the attachment.
No.
Because well, that is isn't that thing on the left the attachment? Yeah. Look at the bottom. Isn't there a list of names on the bottom? Reason for request?
PP number 8, injured on duty, Wilson. Adams.
Yes.
Okay.
Those are the
Oh,
people.
that's, okay.
So yeah, you do have that.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the 10,000. 10,042 for actually 421. Is it the same people? Yeah, same people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you have 7 for one, but they're the same people. You're just adding.
Well, they continue to be sick, so they're out.
So it's regular sick time as well as injured?
No. This is just when I say sick, it means they're injured on duty. I use the term generically.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a question. Because you got it broken down, you got firefighters and lieutenants. Does that make it mean that the lieutenants, there might be a couple lieutenants that
Yes,
are injured too?
whatever,
out of their salary?
whatever account it comes from. So if it's all firefighters, it's all firefighters. If it's all police officers, it's from the police officer account. If it's all lieutenants, it's from the lieutenant. If it's a mixture of both, it's from those two.
For the mix, those two accounts to
Yes.
cover for the individual that's injured.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's tailored to the specific people who are.
Thank you.
For the OT parade, $800.
I know. Yeah, I know nothing about that.
It just says 1,697. OT parade 800. Injured on duty 897. Chief.
Excuse me, Bellamy. Just the 800 for the parade overtime actually shouldn't be here. Some of that got mixed in. It should be. It's 1687, 1697.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It should really be that 887 or 897. It got lumped in there. We do had to move $800 over into the parade overtime weekend to finish up our expenses for the weekend, but somehow. By the object codes, that probably shouldn't have come over here, but that got mixed in with the IOD. So, but the end of the story, the end of it is, it's $1,600 getting moved over. $800 is for to cover up the last of our expenses for parade weekend, and the other part is injured on duty.
Okay. Sorry.
Thanks.
Joe McGivern is actually Councilor McGivern's here as well. Joe, we took up 2, 3, and 5 as a package. I'm not sure if do you have the agenda or do you have a copy? Okay.
Yeah.
So these are for injured on duty, so they're taking them from the certain line items in order to pay for those who are injured on duty.
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer.
But no question, Joe? Or
We can
A quick
discuss it
question.
if we have a motion.
yeah. Motion.
Okay, if I could to the chief. Chief, when you say parade weekend, that's the St. Patrick's Day parade weekend?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. Is there a different line item for the Hispanic Festival?
Yes, there is.
Okay, that accounts okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Vaking made a motion to what again?
Approve the transfer?
Second.
Yes.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 4, make a motion to move from the table.
So moved.
All those in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And I give you leave to withdraw that.
So,
Yes?
Yes, I give you leave to withdraw.
So financial request of $33,000 from patrolman to overtime, and that's, you guys don't need that?
Isn't
That's-
that,
No, it was submitted in error. I submitted it because I thought that account came under the new ordinance, and I found out subsequently when I got the copy of the ordinance that it ends at account number 51299, and this is account 51300. So this doesn't need to be brought before the council. Therefore, I give you leave to withdraw.
so
But
I'll,
we did take money from this account to pay overtime?
Well, we will. We haven't done it yet, but
right, but we didn't increase. the personnel account.
Okay. So item number 4 is leave to withdraw.
I'll make the motion
For a
to give
second.
leave.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? How are you?
Hey,
Joe?
minutes.
All right, so Councilor Leahy is here now. We did items 1 to 5. We took 2, 3, and 5 as a package because it was paying for injured on duty. Item 4, Bellamy just told us it's leave to withdraw. So that leads to item number 6.
Your motion to take item 6 off the table?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Financial request of $30,000 from Reserve to Education and Training.
I'm going to sit down.
Sure.
Just make sure the mic's on, Chief. Thank you.
Good evening, councilors. How are you? Yes, this is a transfer from, I guess I would call it the personnel services side of the house to the expense side of the house. That's why this is here. As you know, we're constantly hiring, and I constantly have people retiring. I have one officer that was away in military duty that came back recently, a full-time officer that got hired with the full-time officers in theory last fall, but he wasn't here. But he's back. But he's slated to go to the academy in June, second week of June. With addition to that, we are hiring 5 more full-time officers that are slated to go to the academy in June. I need that alone. I need $18,000 for to pay the academy fees. Each one of them, the academy gear alone is another $1,000 a piece. So generally speaking, I need $24,000 right off the get just to get that 6 through the academy. And then the other 6 is we've just recently hired 14 reserves. That number is going to change. It's going to diminish slightly because of the 5 full-timers we're putting on. That 14 will drop to 9. But I still have to train and equip them. Of that, 3 of those reserves are already reserved academy trained, so we're trying to get them up to speed almost instantly, buy them all their equipment, and then we have to deal with the other reserves behind them. So that's what that other $6,000 is for. Hopefully we'll get these reserves going, these other reserves going to the academy. There was going to be a reserve academy in July. Now it may get pushed off until September.
After all that's said and done, how many reserves will we have?
Certainly. We will have, for the moment, 9, but I've already asked for a list for civil service to hire another 14. So we're in the process of that.
So I guess to be clear, after this is approved, they go to the training, you'll have 9 reserves, and then you're going to try and do another 14, which you'll have to go through.
Right. Yes, and I'm trying to get those 14 hired, in the next several months. Could be next fiscal year, but I don't want to wait till, next, because then we're always chasing and we're never caught up. If I can pump up my reserve numbers significantly, I think we all win.
I'll make a motion to approve. Oh, sorry.
Neither of these this has nothing to do with either Thomas or Patrick.
No.
Okay. I can go. Yeah.
Chief, the money that you're transferring out, that's from...
The reserve officer account that we have a balance in.
Oh, there is a balance. Is that unusual to have that much in there? Or
well, it depends if we have reserves working, and our reserve numbers are down.
So you had extra in there to
right,
cover for it?
Till we just hired these 14, I believe we were down to 1, and then we hired him as a full-time officer. So.
Okay, and this money, you said $24,000 is for 6 individuals to go to the academy?
It's for 6 to go to the academy and buy
others?
them their academy equipment.
And the other $6,000 is for?
To train and equip, no, I shouldn't say, to equip the first 3 reserves that are ready to go, and any other balance will go towards the other 9 reserves that are going to be left behind. And of course, we'll have to pump more money at that probably in July, more than likely.
Okay, so this will pretty much deplete that account?
No, there's still going to be a balance left in there. There's still going to be a balance. So remember, I'm going to have 3, in short order, I'm going to have 3 working reserves that I can
Parking
actually
reserve.
use.
Okay.
And I'm hoping to put them to work this spring, not this summer.
Okay, thank you.
Bacon had a motion to
Approve the transfer.
Second.
seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you, councilors. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Item number 7, motion from the table.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Financial transfer request $5,000 from free cash to advertising. Make a motion to give leave to withdraw.
Second.
The reason I say that is I got a text from Ryan. There's an email from Kim Counter saying that they don't need it anymore. So we can give a leave to withdraw.
How'd that happen?
So, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Oh, actually, it's right here attached. Morning, Ryan. Please withdraw the order.
Find your mic.
Sorry. Thank you, Linda. The department transfer of money for a line item covering advertising expenses jobs, I do not plan on attending, so leave to withdraw. So, actually, it wouldn't be leave to withdraw, it would be motion to deny. Because
Right,
it's a
right,
request.
because, okay, so,
So motion
To deny. Deny.
second.
It was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Actually, we'll have to go back
To the other one, item 4.
I just remembered that little procedure trick.
Yeah, you got to deny it.
Oh, for number
Item 4.
Yeah.
4.
We'll go back. Motion to reconsider our actions on item number
So
4.
moved.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion was to give leave to withdraw. Make a motion to deny the financial request.
Second.
And as we all know, you have to deny them. You really can't leave to withdraw a financial transfer. So, motion is to deny. It was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
I abstain from that. Does that matter?
Yeah, just yeah.
It was-
You're fine. You're fine. It really.
It was
the
not
order that
needed.
wasn't needed, so
So I can vote for it?
well, I just for now. Just,
To abstain.
You don't need to.
yeah, you don't need to. It's a formality for us to do it in this procedure.
Make
Item
a
8.
motion to take up the item number 8.
All those in favor? All
Aye.
opposed? Order that there hereby be appropriate transfer of $4,000 from free cash to Chief Procurement Officer. Says to restore salary on memo from the mayor. So from free cash, $4,000, Procurement Office, restore salary. So with that, is right here for that? Do you want to come in or do you know? Or? Yeah. So we did get a communication from you that was received at City Council and sent to everyone. You want to talk about it or while it's on the floor? So.
Well, the reason I'm here to ask for restoration is back in April of 2016, I accepted a position from the mayor. Well, he appointed me at a certain rate that was the same rate from the outgoing procurement officer. And then about 3 months later, during the budget hearings, that salary line item was cut by $4,000. And so I'm asking for consideration because in my letter that I'd sent to the council a few weeks ago, I kind of outlined, my process of coming from another municipal agency to the city, and some of, the financial ramifications. Honestly, just was expecting to go from the end of April 2016 into the new fiscal year with the same salary. I just, and I had, I think, detailed in my letter just, what it took to come from Springfield into the city, and, asking for the consideration. Had I known that there was a possibility or whatnot that, the salary would have been cut, I would not have taken the position. It just was close. I mean, I'm in a position in good standing, former DPW commissioner, resident since 2000 or 2004, and then when you come into a situation, and then less than 3 months later, you're planning on one thing and then having the salary cut, I would not have made the jump per se. I'm not asking for more than what the previous purchasing director had made. My understanding was that the budget, when I came in, was already submitted for this last fiscal year, and the salaries were the same. So, and that's just where I'm at, and I'm asking for the consideration. I came in, I feel, I hit the ground running. I was certified in under a year. We're making progress in purchasing, thinking outside the box, taking on more of a program manager / purchasing component, trying to work with my fellow department heads and colleagues in the city, various agencies, to try to come up with programs to save the city money, to be compliant with Mass General Law, and to have good relations with vendors and folks that we do business with. So that's why I'm here before you tonight.
Yeah, thank you for coming in. One of my concerns, I suppose, is the fact that this has nothing with you. I'm taking the person out of the position, and I'm also taking the mayor out of the position. So Jane Smith, who's sitting there, and John Doe, whoever the mayor is, there should be some sort of better way that we as city councilors can deal with hiring people at X amount rate, because I'm not exactly sure how long the person that had the position prior to you was in there, but I would assume that he was at the highest of his step. And so when any mayor is negotiating a deal, how does that work? Do we have any say in that?
We do. The issue before us, to give the history lesson, is for the budget, we cut it in the budget. So any contract that's out there, if it's subject to appropriation by the council, you could say, I'm going to give someone $1 billion. Comes to the city council, it's subject to appropriation. We can knock it down to what we approve.
Right.
And what we did in the budget process was clear across the board for everybody. It wasn't just a certain department head. It was everyone. Classic example is Chief Bond. He was going to get I think it was $17,000 raise. Me, I voted to cut it all the way down to level funding for everyone due to our budget problems. So we try to do that for everybody. I think the only one that actually did keep an increase was the city engineer. We tried several times to cut it in certain ways, but it stayed at whatever it was. That was the only department head that I remember in the budget cycle that received a bump up from its original.
So when a person is applying for a position and the mayor negotiates the rate, so we're not notified. So when it comes to the fact that we're going to have to come up with $4,000 or any dollar difference, that just it's on our shoulders now. So we either look like the good guy. Actually, no, we never look like the good guy or the good person, or we're going to look like the bad person. And in many cases, we find that stuff. I vaguely remember back when Marty Dunn was the mayor. He used to come, I believe, in front of the city council, and he would give so much like the president's minute, or I should say minute. A minute. Yeah, it's certainly not a minute. But he used to give kind of like the mayor's report. And maybe that's something we should do. Maybe we should do it quarterly. Maybe we should find out exactly who's being hired and what he or she is negotiating for a rate. So we don't have an employee that's in the position of giving up a position and coming over to a lateral change, because maybe that person wouldn't have done that. Maybe the person would have done that. Who knows? But then it puts it on the city councilor's shoulder that we have to come up with a very tight-lined It's not the cleanest method, I don't think. Thank you.
Linda, and then Joe.
Joe. He was
Okay, Joe.
first.
Thank you. Laura, you're not by contract, correct?
Excuse me?
You don't have a contract, do you?
I do with the mayor.
You signed a contract,
Yes.
and it had a salary amount in it?
Yes, and the salary amount was provided to the treasurer and the auditor at the end, when I started the end of April. That Lori Belanger is starting this position at a rate of.
And how long is this contract for?
I don't know. It was an agreement that we had in terms of the starting salary.
Okay,
And-
but
and-
that's
and
not a
that-
contract.
yeah, right.
That's-
Okay.
And that is the difference. Your position doesn't come under contract. And when we faced the chief of the fire department, that was the first time we ever heard of a contract for the chief of the fire department. And when we took that vote, it was because that contract was never placed before us. The chief procurement officer is like several department heads who are non-union, non-contractual, who abide by the salary ordinance itself, which is, at our request and agreement, put out the study to make sense out of these salaries in terms of, both comparison of other communities in the area and what's fair for the salaries themselves. The answer to the question of when the appointing authority hires someone, and our president has done this, and there's an ordinance with steps, there is flexibility as to what step, according to the experience of the incoming person has, as to what step they can be placed at. I'm in favor of this because this person came in not just with experience, but was put in at a salary of a chief procurement officer who'd worked for this city for, I believe, 38 years. Am I somewhere in the ballpark when he retired? 10 of his last years, he had no salary increase because he was at the max. We have not adjusted those max for over a decade and a half, yet alone talk about COLAs and just the annual increases that people expect in terms of cost of living. That study is tied up in the ordinance committee, has been there, and now I think going on a year and a half, 2 years, or something like that. We've talked about this till we're blue. Some councilors wanted to do these people as a package or to look at them as a package. Thus, the salary took place. We don't act on the salary, proposals, which is pretty much fair across the board. And then we start, looking at the budget and saying we can't afford it. The same budgets that we give the patrolmen, the firemen, the DPW workers, and every other union person a raise. But the people who lead them, we say we can't afford even the cost of living. If Lori had a contract, the next step is to sue the city. But she can't because she didn't have a contract. But this is something that we have to come to grips with one way or the other. And yes, I understand affordability as much as I understand anyone else, but I'm tired of training people. I'm tired of a Board of Health director who went to the city of Springfield, a building inspector department who was unbelievable, who went to Long Meadow, a board, years ago, a Board of Health who went to the town of South Hadley. And the list goes on, an auditor that didn't retire, that quit because he couldn't take it no more. One of our appointees who has not had an increase in 12 years in the assessor's office. I mean, come on. When is enough enough on affordability? It's nonsense. It's a joke. We have to look at these people as the important part of our employment staff and the best we can compensate them to what they deserve for the work that they do. Or we're just kidding ourselves. It's going to cost us a lot more in the long run with turnover. And that turnover rate is getting higher and higher. That was just a few of the names of people that have left the city because of issues with salary and the opportunity to get better salary in Springfield. We know Springfield's budget isn't much better than ours. Same issues, same problems, but they recognize how to take care of their employees. I'd just like to speak in favor of the 4,000.
Linda?
Thank you. And we will have an opportunity to address this. We'll be receiving the budget next week, and we'll have a chance to look at positions in a group. I have objected almost since the day I got on the council to one at a time adjustments, and whether we agree or disagree on the salary study and the results of it is a matter that we can discuss in the budget hearing. But to Councilor McGivern's point, we have people who have worked in the city for years who have not received a raise for years. We have a new employee who I have no argument whether that employee is doing a good or a bad job. I have no way to evaluate that. I do know that when we had a highly qualified auditor, because the pay was cut on the council floor for that position, that person did not accept the position. And that is what happens. That's what happens in life. Some people take the positions, some people don't take the positions. So to me, it's utterly unfair to give one new employee a $4,000 raise, which is a huge percentage over what the budget was approved, while we do have all these other people, the point earlier made, that have worked here for years without a raise. I think that is blatantly unfair, and I will not be supporting this transfer at this time. Thank you.
Can I address that, please? What I find unfair is that when I started the end of April, the budget for FY17 was already planned out and the numbers were already assigned. In the same budget, the chief procurement officer, my understanding, was the same amount from 16 going into 17. Yes, I'm a new employee, but you could make the argument that were you going to cut the salary if my name was David Martins? That's what I find a little bit somewhat, I guess I just don't understand it. That the budget was already submitted, and what was communicated to me from the mayor was it would just go from here to here. I wasn't asking for anything more. I was just, planning on just going from one budget, one FY, 16 into 17 with the same salary. Yes, I understand folks haven't had raises. I understand that there's a salary study. However, that predates me starting. If folks aren't getting raises and whatnot, that's really out of my hands. I'm strictly here coming to this body with clean hands, explaining my situation, and that if the salary item was cut $4,000, the mayor would have known that when we had negotiated my package, yes? And I would have said at that time that salary is not acceptable. But it wasn't, because it was already in the budget. And yes, you can cut the salaries and cut the budget. That's within your duties. But it just seems to me that, if I had known, and I would have known in April, that line item was going to be cut, it would have had a different outcome.
Thank you. To address those points, the City Council receives the budget in May, acts upon the budget throughout May, and the budget is approved beginning July 1. So it's not possible that a budget for the next year could be set in April. That's just not possible. There was no approach relative to names. There were certain councilors who took approach relative to experience, whether the person in the position was certified, whether the person in the position had actually run a procurement office. That I cannot speak to the consideration that each counselor brought to the table in that regard. I can speak to my own. And that was the review and the consideration that I took. And in light of the fact that the City Council had in the past, for a equally qualified person, reduced the salary because a very experienced person had been in the position for years at a fixed salary, I feel that the actions of the council were consistent. They were consistent relative to the salaries. They were fair in terms of the treatment. Whether you agree with the result or not, the treatment and the approach was consistent, and it was not based on persons by name. It was based on positions what the base had been and what the people in the positions had in the positions. We had had a history of problems going on 3 years, which is why these now must come before us, where we passed a budget, the mayor ignored the budget, transferred money within the budget, changing salaries by $5,000, $7,000, $8,000, $10,000, we would be presented with in the next year with a huge base increase upon which the next raise was based, which gave the city council no ability to have accountability with the budget. That first we take the heat for cutting, which is the only thing we can do with the budget. We cannot propose spending. So we would take the heat for being fiscally accountable. Then throughout the year, the transfers would just occur. So the steps we took to be accountable were undone without us having any ability to address it. This has been raised year after year after year. And here we are again, and it's the same thing. And so I'm saying no. I've been saying no for 5 years. Now we've made it an ordinance in the city, and I am going to vote in accordance with the ordinances and the reasons why we set them. I don't know exactly when you came into the position. I think you came in sometime before you were appointed as the procurement officer in a different position prior to that.
It was acting, yes, acting.
Right, so, you know, we can't guarantee what will happen when you come in a process that's just beginning for the budget review. And we're going to be in it next week also. Thank you.
Councilor Sullivan?
Thank you. If a person is brought into the city, hired by the chief executive officer of the city, and promised something, I think our argument, our beef should be with the person that did that, not to victimize the person that accepted the job in good faith and expected that remuneration. It also, I think, highlights our need really to get on with the business of addressing the rest of the pay issues that are out there for the non-union employees. Because someone else, to me, the position obviously seems 10 years without any change in it at all. To expect to use that as a reason for holding a bad number and passing that along now and still not addressing the situation just seems wrong. And to expound on what Councilor McGivern said, also think about not only the positions he mentioned, even in our solicitor's office, we've had tremendous turnover. We've got to start addressing this problem. And in this case here, the beef should be with the chief executive officer, not the person that accepted the job in good faith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would have stoned your budget if I'd known it was in there. One last time. And one thing about Councilor Bacon's point is I have no problem about looking at this group of employees as a package. No problem whatsoever. And years ago when that was first proposed, I like most of us. Well, it's kind of hard to talk and listen. I'm good, okay? Joe. I know you're good, and some people are good at pretending they're listening, not listening anyways. But I voted I think near unanimous to study these employees' salaries for a reason, and it's Councilor Leahy's point earlier this evening. Exactly what the problem is we have not adjusted these salaries by ordinance. They're not by contract. We have not adjusted the steps, the entry level positions, the entry level salary, the mid salary, and the max salary of these positions in I think 20 something years. And when you have people who served the city for 25, 30 years, and Mr. Martin 30 something years, that becomes unfair to them because even if you don't want to adjust the max, you can no longer give them a cost of living increase, and they sit there without any increases whatsoever. So we voted for that salary study, and when you look at that salary study, it goes position by position. Some salaries don't even move at all, but it shows you a fair way of a max salary for each of the positions according to comparing not just communities in the area, but comparable communities to the city of Holyoke. It was a very in-depth study, and it makes a lot of sense. There were no increases when we received that study if we adopted it, with the exception of some people in the library who, those figures are the most even more ridiculously low than our DPW workers. And if we adopted that salary, all it did was give the appointing authorities, most of the time the mayor, the ability to pinpoint a salary, still subject to our vote by appropriation. But you can't say we don't want to go one by one and ignore the salary study. If you disagree with the salary study, we can amend it, but we have to act on it. We have to work on it. We have to make it work so we have choices. Jimmy was exactly right. You know, the flaw is the system because we haven't adjusted it in so long. And individuals are being hurt by that. It's unfair. It's the wrong message. And we are losing good people. And who knows how many people the auditor was the auditor to replace Brian Smith, who didn't retire, who left because of this whole problem. The auditor that we had to replace him, you know, was coming in at a pay cut from what he was making with PARAC to work his final years with the city of Holyoke with more experience than any one of us have ever seen in this room in terms of finances. So, I mean, let's call it what it is. You don't want to give it, just say, I don't want to give the increase. But don't say it's because it's one at a time. Don't say it's because it's unfair. Because when you hide the study in the ordinance committee, that's unfair to all of us as city councilors.
Make a motion to pass.
Wait, hold on. Linda, did you have a comment? Or?
I do.
Okay.
The point I will make is that study sat in the ordinance committee when I became chair of the committee. And as far as it being buried, it was sent back for revision because it was not affordable, particularly when there would be discretion to hire people. High on the range has been the practice of the city hall. So it went back for revision on the scales. It's in committee, and right now, that's where it sits. And if the committee wants to take it up, the committee will take it up. Now it's a 2-year-old study. For us to be using that as the bully pulpit politically, I know it's an election season, is to me just that. We have serious budget issues in this city, and I'm not making excuses for my position. I'm explaining my position. You can call it what you will. But I have been very strong on this point. This budget has been manipulated, twisted, and overridden every time we've turned around. And I'm standing on the fact that we made changes in the budget for a reason, voted by the council. I am happy, obviously, as a member of the council. I serve at the pleasure of the community, and I yield to the will of the body. And whatever is the will of the body will be what will happen. But please do not spin my words into excuses. They are not excuses. They are explanations. Thank you.
Joe, and then...
If we passed that salary study 2 years ago, the cost would have been $14,000 up front. That's the only cost that it would have put on the city. And again, that was for almost all that was towards library workers who were working under, I think even under the minimum wage. It was so ridiculous.
In the moment.
The increases reflect, and yes, the max increases reflect some higher numbers than we are familiar with, but that's because we haven't adjusted the numbers in so many years. That's the whole point. It's not an appropriation to adjust a salary range. It's allowing the flexibility to do what is right as you hire people and as people progress in their positions. The other thing, and I wasn't going to point this out, but I'm going to now, is, let's go back one other fiscal year in 2015 when the body cut through the budget process, cut a number of salary increases that year based on affordability. Nobody made a motion to cut the biggest increase that year, which was the superintendent of the DPW. It stuck out like a sore thumb. But not one person who was making cuts to salary increases wanted to cut the DPW superintendent that year. That's politics.
Let's go check on that one, but I don't think that's politics, Joe. I do believe and I'll be clear, is what I did last year is made a cut to everything. Now that I'm going into the book here, on this one, it is saying 2014, 15, 16 was $58,644. You're making now $54,644. Correct?
Yes.
So we cut it in order to get it to a salary that was under what was already budgeted for. So we didn't level fund it. We actually cut under it, which is what we did. Which then I think we went way off scope here. We're talking about salary studies or an ordinance and everything else. Everyone can make an argument that Tony, the assessor, hasn't been funded in years. He's at $51,017. That's been stuck there for years. I think this one was, since it was a new person coming in, they made a cut to get it at a position for a new person coming in, not at the max, which is what Dave was, which was $58,644. To me, I thought it was over that, and we cut it back to 58. Now, looking at the budget, it's 54. So for me, if I'm talking about level funding, it should be at the 58. So I wasn't going to vote for you tonight until I actually just looked up the numbers again. I'll vote for the 4,000 because I voted for level funding for everybody. It has nothing to do with a salary study. What this has to do is level funding across the board for everybody. The only one we didn't do it for, under my memory, was the engineer. And I made the motions to cut it. As far as DPW, I'm not sure if there was a huge increase there, but I'll go back and check that one to make absolutely sure. So for me, that's where we stand. The 4,000 to me represents the level of funding that I've been asking for in every budget cycle. So I'm going to stick by what I always say.
So I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
So are you making?
She's making
58.6 or
54.644.
Well, no, she said she was hired at 58.6.
Yep.
And then,
Did the mayor cut your salary in July?
yes, I'm making 54 now. I've got my pay stub.
I'm just wondering why, if that happened so many months ago, you're just here now.
I'm not here now. I think there was a process where I came in as acting procurement officer, received my certification in the fall, and then there was a group of us that came in the non-bargaining unit that came in to try to make some corrections with the salary. So I believe that was at the first of the year. I sent the letter to the city council a few weeks ago, and then here we are here. So,
okay.
Now I do recall that you were appointed by the mayor, and then the president sent out the memo that had to come before the city council. At that point in time, that's where we really should have saw the budget numbers, or the agreement as we're calling it. Once again, I mean, if you really want to point fingers, it goes back to communication. There was no communication as to the numbers until you get the budget, and then they started cutting things. So if we're really going to be nitpicky on this, lack of communication. For me, once again, it's going to be level funding. As far as the study, I have been asking that we give 1 to 2% increases each and every year for people so they can have a cost of living. That's standard in any industry. Times are tough, but that gets you there. I've been arguing this ever since I got on, because when I was looking at the police budget, instead of giving that, whether it's fire or police, they weren't getting those. They were getting vacation days or more sick days, which then is adding to the budget. So for me, if you give the 1 or 2% or 3%, depending on the year, at least you're helping the person and trying to keep up with everything else, the cost of living. We haven't done that. That's what we should be doing until we all get on the same page. That's going to be the problem. So once again, for me, I wasn't going to vote for this, but by looking at it, saying that you actually were under what is level funding, what I was looking at, then I'm not going to have a problem with this.
Thank you.
I agree to the same thing. I've had a couple issues where I've actually talked to Lori about different things with their department, and I see the professionalism she has showed in running the department and thinking outside the box. People are here saying it's an increase. There was no increase. You were cut. You weren't getting paid what you're supposed to get paid, which I believe isn't right. I talk about increased salary studies and everything, and it's just being a non-union employee. There is no increases, and my colleagues here stated that maybe a 1%, 2% cost of living would be something that we could work into there. Budget time's coming again, and we'll have to look at everything. But as we, with the auditor position, had one of probably the best trained persons and knew everything about finances, that we lost him because they cut the budget, and that was unfortunate. But you were hired at a certain salary, and who's to say that if this study wasn't done, or if the 1%, 2% weren't given every year, that Dave Martins might have been at about $65,000, $70,000. Last 10 years he wasn't getting anything. So you starting at where he ended, I guess a lot of counselors felt that you were getting too much because maybe you didn't have the experience. Mm-hmm. But where you came from and the education you got to learn this position, to be knowledgeable with the general laws and to do the job, I feel that you are deserving of the $58,000, and I will be voting in support of that.
Thank you.
One clarification has been brought up 3 times now. The auditor that was supposed to come here didn't come here because of the budget cut that we did on that position. I disagree. Yeah, we did cut it, but his ultimate email and letter back to us was that he didn't feel comfortable working with the full body of the council, that some people didn't like him. So it wasn't about the money, because then we restored the money, and he still didn't come back. It was about working with the city. He didn't want to take that chance. He didn't like certain members. So it wasn't the money. Let's just be clear on it. And actually, we do have Bellamy here, who has done a wonderful job. And now we have our new treasurer. I'm going to say he's going to do a wonderful job too. So here's the whole point. We have people in place. It's not always about the money. It's about working for a city that has limited resources. So, let's just move on from this. If there are any other questions. No? All right. Is there a motion?
I give a motion to pass the transfer of $4,000 from free cash to the chief procurement officer.
All right, motion is to approve. It was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
2-1. Make a motion to remove item.
Have a good night.
Number 10, we skipped number 9. There's no 9.
I guess we lost number 9. So we'll
Item
go to
10.
Item number 10.
9 disappeared.
Move from the table.
So moved.
In favor. All opposed. Financial transfer request of $3,000 from free cash to claims and general. Claims general. This is $3,000 from free cash to claims, which I did talk to Sarah Carroll before she left. This is account for potholes and everything else that I have received phone calls in my ward too. A mailbox was absolutely destroyed by a plow. We owe $70-something to that. This account is low, so therefore this should get us to the end of the year.
That's exactly what Sarah told me, and that's all I can tell you.
And she did tell us she would be submitting that.
Yeah. So this is like potholes, broken things that the city damaged.
Every year.
Motion to approve the transfer.
Second.
All right, motion is to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? item number 11, motion moved from the table. All those in favor? All those opposed? Order that $37,500 from short-term interest library night assistance motor vehicle operator to Halo Rent. Anyone here for this one?
What's Halo Rent?
Anthony, how are you?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Doing well, thank you. Want to tell us a little bit about this one?
We had come back about a month and a half or 2 months ago and asked to get caught up on rent. And the city council had approved $80,000, which would have gotten us through the end of March. And now we're seeking a transfer to get us through the end of the year. We did put together a task force to review options on a move for central office, and those options were presented to the city council.
This is Halo. This is not the central office.
Okay.
That's what's my question.
This is for over here.
Is that in place
Okay,
of
my
it?
apologies.
Yeah, there's going to be the $80,000 coming up for you,
Yeah.
but I thought you were leading
There's like
into
4
this.
things on there. My apologies.
This is Halo Rent only.
Yes.
Not the $80,000 for building.
Okay. So the Halo Rent, we had received a cut at the beginning of the budget towards the end of the budget process, and what we're doing is we're seeking to restore that cut. That Halo program hasn't been moved. I'm not sure what other options we have. We did explore moving the program into the library. We discussed several options, but nothing really solid has been done in terms of being able to move the adult education and the Halo program out of its current location. So we did pay the rent for 3 months, and we're past due on rent for pretty much for the whole year, and they're seeking to get their payment.
Under discussion.
Leahy and then Kevin.
Thank you. Where exactly is the Halo Center?
It's the bus station, the new bus station there, the old fire station.
And who do we pay the rent to?
I believe it's Holyoke Community College.
And how much do we owe them in total?
It's $50,000 per year.
And we're looking to get out of that?
I don't believe there's any plans to get out of that at the moment.
And how many people do we serve there for? And this is for teaching English there or literacy?
This is for adult education, and even more recently, we moved our Pathways program to there. So next year, as part of the high school redesign, we are looking to have some alternative pathways and looking for that to be a site to run those programs out of.
How many people do we service there? I mean, I'm just thinking, if you want it in the downtown setting, we have Dean Technical. I'm not sure if that's full, but if you could save $50,000 a year to having it at Dean.
I don't have an answer to that question, but I can certainly follow up and get you that information.
And is HEC sitting like a demand notice?
I haven't seen one yet.
So is this something that can be tabled for you to get these answers?
Yes.
So hold on, Kevin had a question.
Yep.
Councilor Denny?
Thank you. Anthony, welcome. Kevin Jourdain, how are you? Good to see you again.
Great. How are you?
Couple of points. So we cut this in last year's budget, and you know that occurred back last June 2016. We're now, it's currently, I believe, April 26, 2017. And so the answer is ignore what the clear message of the Holyoke City Council, which is to trim your budget, stop wasteful spending, and the answer is go to hell. That's basically what you did, right? You guys, well, in so many words, you just basically kept going. There's no change. There's been nothing done. There's no move to do something else. We cannot afford to subsidize all these programs. You don't have the money. We don't have the money. You've got to come up with real solutions of which you're not doing. Okay? So let me be the messenger of that. I'm going to say the same thing we said 9-10 months ago, which is we've got to stop the spending. You've got to be able to manage on the budget you're provided by the city council, period. And if you can't do that, you can't come back and say, well, you know, the rent's past due, and, you know, this is a real problem. Well, yeah, the rent's past due because you didn't move. You got to get out of those, and you have to put this. You can't teach kids at night over at Dean. I mean, adults that come in and want to have an education program and come and learn at Dean in an empty classroom for free at no cost. I mean, we got to think out of the box. We can't afford $4,000 a month for this program. I mean, we've got no money. It's gone. It's empty. The well is dry. Okay? So let me be I don't know, I'm assuming you already know that because you've got your department has a whole list of things for more money requests here, right? And we'll discuss each of those as they come along. But this Halo, I put this in the same genre as the Creative Arts Center, where we had to cut them off, okay? Between us and the mayor, there was finally an understanding. We just can't afford these niceties. And basically, your department is going to have to come up with creative solutions to come up with it and do it elsewhere. City Council absolutely should not be giving you this money back. We're crazy if we do. We're in denial. We need help if we give you this money. Okay? So I'm just letting you know that, you know, that this is, to me, is a ridiculous request. You guys haven't done anything to move out of this situation. And all of these 50 grand here and 50 grand here, and I get the same speech, it doesn't count towards net school spending. And that's all, which is true, because it doesn't educate children. Number two is, we're not required to fund this. We have zero legal obligation to fund this program, the City of Holyoke. Period, none. So this is something that your department has wanted to do as a nicety. Noble, wonderful, but you've got to think of somewhere else to educate these people. That's just not a luxury anymore. We can afford these high-priced rents. So you just have to make do with what you have. So, you know, I feel like a broken record. Like every year we keep saying the same thing over and over again. But I will say your strategy generally, and this is predates you, generally works. Come in, oh, we couldn't do it, and now we have a bill that we owe because management made a decision not to fix it, and then cry on the shoulder of the city council, and generally the city council turn around and vote and give you the money. That doesn't work with me. And hopefully it doesn't work with at least 6 councilors on this board, because we should not be transferring these funds back to your department.
Anyone else for Anthony? Is there, Joe?
Just more of a question. It might be more towards the auditor. Anthony, is the Halo rent line item in the school budget?
It's a line item above our required net school spending.
No, I understand that, but is it part of your budget?
It was, but it was significantly reduced.
Okay. Yes. By who?
By the council.
Okay. The council has no authority to reduce that. We have no line item control over your budget whatsoever. And I said that when we talked about Suffolk Street rent, and I said that when we talked about any of these items. Bellamy, what is the significance of an order like this before us this evening in terms of state law? We have no line item control over the school department budget. We have a net school spending responsibility. We historically go above net school spending, but the school department...
You authorize a certain total amount of spending by the schools.
Correct.
And this increases that total amount of spending. It's giving you a detail as to why that total amount of spending is going up, but it is going into a one line that is overall expenses for the school, and it's like $27 million. It's not the personnel line, it's the non-personnel line. So it's just increasing that total, regardless of what else is in there. But they're explaining it in terms of what we want the money for is to do this rent, but it's going into that one line item of the budget.
I understand all that. That's clear.
Am I not understanding your question?
Line item control. A budget has line items. School department has a
two
budget.
line items only. The budget you approve has only two line items for the school: personnel expenses and general expenses. So this is asking to put more money
look at the budget
into,
you gave us. We only have one line item, and it's only a number.
That's because we haven't broken it out. We break it out into two line items later in the budget process. But
Okay, but that's not what you give us, and it's
Yeah,
still
that's correct.
Still getting to my point is, if we reduce that total line item, we might suggest, we're not interested in, the schools continuing Halo. We might, renting for Halo. We might suggest, and Dr. Zweig's been great about the office situation on Suffolk Street, but we really don't have control over those line items.
Can I just interject there? No, and we could choose to, if you reduce the budget by 50,000 for in this case the Halo round, we could choose to pull it out of somewhere else. So it's just saying you just reduced our overall budget
Correct.
and that was the conversation we had, last what was it, June, yeah. So yeah. But you can't tell us where to reduce. You can tell us, though, that you want to reduce the budget by a certain amount.
As long as and I think we've always been better with net school spending than, for the poorest community in the Commonwealth, I think our ratio of above net school spending has got to be something to be commended when it comes to education.
I think historically it's been there. We're in the last few years we're looking at that, but historically, yes, you're right, Mr. Councilman McGivern.
So, Doctor, why are you here then? Do you have a deficit in your budget?
We do.
Okay, and what is the real cause of the deficit?
Well, transportation is a huge cause of the deficit, and we went that aspect of it. We knew when we presented here, we were not fully funded in transportation, and we said that at the time. All right, so that's a big issue for our deficit. The second area is the rent for the central office. That's an area, and we've worked on. I certainly appreciate what the charge was. That's something we have worked on. I understand. Councilor Jordane's concern about Halo, and I don't know if I can go into more specifics, but we don't. Maybe that's right now is not the time on Halo, but that is a space that you're right. We were told that was cut. We are doing more with that space, and it's not just educating adults now. We actually are using it as our high school alternative program, which is something we were asked by the community to do, but. In response to Councilor Jordane, that was an area that we talked about last June, and to say that we've come up with different solution. Our focus has really been on the central office relocation since that point, which I think we've made a lot of progress on up until now. But the real cause of our deficit is transportation, and that's something that was known last year at this time. So I just want to be clear about that.
And this is, with all due respect, because you're doing your job, and I think most of us think you're doing a good job in terms of the administration and the management of a lot of things. The city council has never had and still doesn't have line item control, but receivership took line item control away from the school committee.
That's correct.
Who's watching the line items?
Right.
Auditor's office doing it? No. So if you get my point, and I mean this with no disrespect.
Oh, I understand.
There is no oversight. All we have is numbers here that can go anywhere when we approve this evening. We're not approving. I understand the transportation. I remember you talking about the transportation. I understand Suffolk Street. I think we've made good progress. Hale is a minor issue, I think, in terms of what we're really talking about this evening. If we add all this up, that's in request. It's close to $1 million. Mm-hmm. I need some really deep answers about unemployment. Because you and I had a good conversation. We had a public.
So we'll get to that.
I know, but it's in Councilor Jardine. I know we're talking about one item on the agenda. But we have no control over the line items.
I get that, Joe, but it's going to be up in the next two. I know we want to package it all together. If we want to do that, then we should take them all up as a package, and then that way.
I'm suggesting that, Mr. Chairman, because this is not a line item problem. We can talk about transportation, unemployment. It's an overall budget issue.
And let's do that instead of, because I know what you want to do and it makes sense, but for the people who are at home watching it, we just started on Halo. Now we're on busing and everything else.
I apologize, but my point is...
No, Joe, you're absolutely right. So let's finish this and then get back on the same page, and then that way everyone will be on the same page. So anyone else with regards to Halo rent? Jimmy?
I do. So I know that I had asked if we could table this for you to get the information, but I was just doing a little digging on my own here. So I guess the basic pillars of what Halo does is literary skills, job development, and computer literacy. And last year, the success of Halo was graduating 13 students. And out of those 13, if I'm reading this correctly, 6 of them had passed a high school equivalency test. Is that correct?
Steve, do you have
that? I don't have the numbers for last year from Halo, but I wouldn't dispute those yet.
I'm just thinking, so we're paying $50,000 per year for the rent there, and not exactly sure. I can't find how much we're paying for the administrative cost and also the teacher cost as well. This is something I think that could be done. So it's also for the hours. It's also it's at nighttime. So we could be doing that at Dean. We could be doing that at any school.
Yeah. So do you mind if I just clarify a little bit on that? So Halo is during the day, and that's the adult ed portion of it. That is during the day. They offer courses for, and then we get grants to pay for teachers in that program. The money has historically been. For the $50,000 has been for the rent exclusively. This year, though, on top of the adult ed portion, Holyoke Public Schools is running our high school alternative program Pathways out of the same space. We're actually utilizing more of the space than before. The rent hasn't changed; it's still the $50,000. But we run we have about 35 students who have not been successful in our high schools, either Dean or Holyoke High, and it's our alternative program for kids that are overage, underaccredited. We have some students at Gateway at HCC, but then we have 35 kids over at Pathways. Those courses are all during the day. It's a mix, and so they're taking courses by the same teachers who teach adult ed. They're getting instruction, and these are high school age students. We expect to graduate this year on top of the adults who are getting their HiSAT, which was now the name for GD. We are also expecting to graduate at least a dozen to 20 high school students who had fallen off track as well. So that's new this year. The rent cost has remained the same. So we're doing more with the space, just as a point of clarification. It is not a nighttime program because HCC uses that space for other things in the evening.
Okay. And so, if memory serves correctly, in Suffolk Street, I think you guys have a total of about 50, maybe less than 50 employees in that big building?
What is the number now?
I think it's about 45. Yeah. 45? And that's a big building. I've been in it many times. Why couldn't we have those 35 students taking the classes in Suffolk Street? We're paying a lot of money for that building.
We don't. There aren't spaces there. They're big open spaces there that aren't classroom spaces. Now that as we've made shifts in the staff, we actually do offer we do some of our tutoring of kids in that space. Next year, consolidating wouldn't allow that to happen.
How many students do you have at Dean Technical High School?
We have we have about 300 students there now.
And how many?
No, we have space there. We do have space there.
So if you could just indulge me, because Councilor McGivern is right on target here. We get one line item, so I have absolutely zero idea how much. If you're hiring more staff, if you have another person at the high school, you have this person, that person, we have zero control of that, which is interesting to me because we're the ones that are voted in to represent, our constituents.
Yep.
But yet we can't make any decisions with that. Which, the other argument is, we have had the opportunity for many years and it wasn't working. So, all right, so let's push that aside for a second. What I would like to do is I would like some sort of, are we allowed to ask you for the budget and see the budget and have like an open checkbook? Is that a line item that, so Councilor McGivern, we can look down and see exactly how much Bellamy is spending on postage. We can look down exactly and find out how much Ryan is spending on pins and papers, but we have absolutely no control, or not even control, we have no access to see what is happening. Can you send that to me?
Yeah, we can. I mean, you can request any documents that are public records. Yeah, absolutely. So we can certainly do that.
Okay. All right, that's it for now. Thank you.
Just to follow up, for the rent at the bus station, is there a lease?
Yes.
Is it a year lease?
I don't necessarily know the terms of the lease or anything. I'd have to get my hands on it.
Right. So you need to know that.
Yep.
If it's a month-to-month, kind of like Suffolk Street, unfortunately, not unfortunately, but Kevin's point is absolutely on par, which is we told you in June we're cutting the budget. Granted, it referenced this. We can't tell you. You can pull monies from wherever you want, but if you knew it, and you had from June till now, if it is month-to-month, and you say Dean has space, does Lawrence have space? Suffolk Street, we've always we've been working on it. You have too much space. Granted, it's not classrooms, but we can think outside the box and do something. We've done nothing. So to me, from June to now, especially if it is month to month, we could have told HCC we're leaving and we're moving, and we haven't. That's the problem. So for me, I don't even want to table it. I'll just be clear. I'm not funding it. It's an honorable program, but we have space elsewhere, and we're not utilizing it to try and save money for the city. That's my problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's been. I hear the point. The program's been a successful, long-standing program. I understand your all point. It hasn't been we've focused on a tremendous amount of things. Our priority was the central office. We've worked on that all year. Fair. I mean, I understand the point there. I understand and I respect that. But it is and that is something we'll work on in the future. I get it. And we'd have to figure something out. But this is also a program that it's not just the Holyoke Public Schools. There are partners that are part of it. It's part of the Juntos initiative. So it's more complicated than just us. We happen to be the ones, the money funnels through us, but the program is part of a larger collaborative that provides adult education services in the community. It isn't, that part of the program isn't part of our core function as a school district. The alternative program is, and I mean, it's a long-standing, successful, I will say, partnership that we've inherited. I understand the point. And I would like. It is very well suited to stay there, but I understand the need for taxpayers to. I understand the need to be efficient with funding, and so that's something we'll have to look at.
All right, just to be clear, it's not you. I'm just making sure people at home understand it. It has nothing to do with the program.
Yeah.
Oh. Great program. We're all in support of the program. All the partners are involved. We're clear on the record, right?
Absolutely.
All clear. It's about the rent.
Yep.
We don't have to pay rent at this facility when we have other facilities we can use for free. Is everyone on board with that? Okay.
Sounds
so
great.
The program is fine. We support the program. We don't support rent in places we don't have to pay for. Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, the chairman's exactly right. I'll take it one step further. I'll say that I would like to get us to a point where the school department can be sufficient with the buildings it has, so we get to a point someday that we're not paying, the Holyoke School Department isn't paying rent for anything to anybody for space. So the next question is, I'm warm to this 80,000 because of the hard work that you've done to apparently figure something out for the rest of this year and going forward with the school department offices. But eventually, we're going to have to make a decision there too, right? That's not going to be a long-term rental situation. My understanding is the two rent bills you got is central office and Halo. So I think you've heard Halo tonight. You already heard central office in the last budget, and I think we sent the message with the cut. We're likely to restore that based on the hard work you did, okay, and recognition of that, and that we're weaning ourselves off soon at some point so we can get to a point where we're zero rent in the district in terms of rental bill. Unfortunately, I do go. Yes, sir. I don't want to interrupt you. Did you want to add something? Or okay, if the chair will indulge me, I did want to just say on the school department stuff overall, because I have to go to another meeting. I'll be listening carefully and getting information from my colleagues on this unemployment line and the transportation. I will only make one point. The mayor was real clear during the budget hearing last time. I will hold them to the budget that we gave for transportation. And to your credit, you said that is not enough. Right. Because I said this school department is underfunded. And a number of my colleagues said that too, because the numbers didn't add up when it came to your transportation budget.
It did not add up, no.
But the chief executive sat here and said, I will hold them to this, okay? They're going to just have to figure it out. But now that all comes to fruition, and 10 months later, here we are with a request now for the $400,000 that everybody in the room knew was coming. That's the funny part of the whole story, right? We all knew. So this is the games that go on when we say, my budget is only 0.6% more than last year's budget.
But Kevin, let's just, we're going to take that up right next.
And
so
then,
let me.
Well, yeah, and then, so I'm going to say that, and then in conclusion, well, I think that sums up your 4 items. And I'm sure we'll get a list of who's everybody getting unemployed. We'll get some sort of list of titles. You don't have to necessarily give us names, but I would like a list of titles and pays and how we get up to $300,000 as to the unemployment. And if you're not paying their salaries, why if they were already funded for their salaries in the budget, why can't we fund their unemployment? Because that's what we do for other departments. So on that, unfortunately I have to go to another meeting, but thank you for that.
With regards to this one, for everyone, for the Halo rent, is there a motion?
You said you don't want to table it?
To me, even if we get the total number of people, the lease and everything else, it's still something we're going to fund.
I'll make a motion to deny.
I'll second it. So the motion is to deny. It was seconded.
Under discussion?
Yep.
Can we ask them where they're planning, because they're obviously going to pay this. Can we ask them where they're going to take that money from?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
I don't have an answer for that right now.
No, because what concerns me is what this fine gentleman had said, that he said, I think one of the other counselors had said, talking about the money, and he had said the city council had cut the money from this. And I just want to make it clear to the people at home that we didn't cut the money from this. We cut money from a line item. We don't have control of line item efficiency. So I just want to make sure the people at home and people that are here know that it was not us, the city councilors, who did that.
No, Jimmy, you are correct, and I'll read it. On page 27 of our budget, it says school department. Personal services, $47,441,627. Expenses, $16,688,917. All we did is say cut $37.50 from it. They can move it to cutting supplies, whatever it is. We just cut that number down. We didn't say where it was going towards. However, we did bring up that we have a serious problem of paying rent in places when we have facilities that can be used for free. Once again, they can take it from wherever they want. Anthony.
I just want to clarify one thing. Although you guys don't have line item control, implying that we can just move money from another account to fund that lease would put the city at risk of not meeting net school spending because we're funded at the bare minimum net school spending amount in the budget appropriation that we present to you. So implying that we can move money from another one of our accounts, which do qualify for educational expenses, and fund something that doesn't, puts us in a position where you don't meet net school spending and would eventually give it to us in the following year. If it were, in fact, that we don't meet net school spending, which this past year we did not meet net school spending.
To be even more clear, to even go above that.
Yep.
3750 didn't represent the entire year for rent. Therefore, it represented a portion of money to pay rent to then find a spot and move. That was not done.
Correct.
Therefore, it had nothing to do with net school spending. It had the ability to have sufficient funds to then go find a spot and move to. Not done. Not talked about, not acted on, nothing occurred. It sat there. To get you to the spot where you're at today is, oh, we're out of time, we need that money again. Where does the liability stand? The part of the actions not being taken. Okay, Linda.
Since I've been on the council, I've been given information every year that the city has exceeded net school spending. I've never heard until tonight that the city did not meet net school spending, and I would like to see a spreadsheet that shows us that.
Sure.
Because every bit of information I've ever heard is that we have exceeded net school spending for years and years, including this year. So I'm, quite frankly, very surprised to hear you say that we're not meeting net school spending requirement. I thought that was a matter of law.
Yes, I can certainly provide you with that information. I did give it to the council when we came to present at the budget hearing for FY17. I did give a trend on the city standing with net school spending. There was 1 year in the last 5 years that we didn't meet it, but the other years we did exceed it, and I can clarify how we exceeded it. The way net school the budget that we had asked for was the minimum net school spending requirement.
For this year?
Every year when we come to the council, we ask for the minimum net school spending requirement. If we have carryover funding from the previous year and it gets carried into the current year, that gets added to our appropriation, and that's where in some years where it shows that we spent at above net school spending.
Okay, so far be it from me to tell you how to do your job, but if you're sitting there telling us that we have not met our legal obligation
this past year
for net school spending, then your request to us would be very simple. To show us the math and show us the numbers and show us where we are failing to meet our legal obligation to the schools. That would be a very simple discussion for us to have. Thank you.
Jimmy?
Yeah, Bellamy. Since you've been here, how many times have we not reached the level of net school spending?
I have no idea because I don't calculate it and I don't receive reports on it.
You guys, so you don't get that either.
No, it's to me it's a technical matter between the school department and the state. It's not something that I audit or even fully understand.
So, sir, since you have the answers, out of the last 6 years or so, how many times did we not make the minimum of net school spending?
Last year, and I believe in 2012. I don't want you to quote me on that, but I can go back and get that information.
Bring that information, yeah.
But this past year, the way the net school spending...
That's 2015 or 2016?
So that we don't know whether or not we meet net school spending until we fill out our final financial report, because the net school spending calculation is not based on budget. It's based on actual expenditures. So if, for purposes of simplifying it, if you give us $100 and our minimum requirement is $100 to spend on education, and we go and spend 98, then we miss our mark of meeting net school spending, not because you didn't appropriate the money, but because we didn't spend it all. And another example that I would use is if we take that $100 and pay for transportation or rent, when we fill out the end of year report, we show that we spent $100, but we show that we spent it in a category that they don't count towards net school spending. So they would then say, they would write a letter to the city saying, hey, you were supposed to spend $100, you didn't spend the $100.
What's the outcome from the state if we don't meet net school spending?
There's a penalty if you're within 5%, but they require you to actually appropriate the funding in the following fiscal year.
So we as city councilors could give you exactly the $100 you asked for. You spend 60 cents on that, an administrative cost. We don't make net school spending, and now we have to go back to our taxpayers and say we have to give more money.
No, you just give us the $40 in the following year.
It's not
because we didn't spend it, we carried it over.
Or you did spend it and you spent it on administrative costs.
Those count towards education. It's just transportation and adult ed that doesn't, and leases.
Okay, so
leases greater than 3 years. Sorry.
Okay, so like this, so Suffolk Street,
Halo rent, and transportation.
And so, if it's Jim Leahy, if I had this position, I would be, I'd be like, wow, we didn't make this because me sitting here for all these years, I've been. I mean, did you know? What's that? Yeah, I always assumed that we did more than enough, exceeded it. This is the first I've heard that.
Well, and this year last year, if you remember this, there was a cut to transportation, and we used instructional expenses to make up the difference. And that's the reason why we didn't meet net school spending.
So how many more administrative levels did you hire this year?
How many more?
Yeah.
We actually reduced.
Yeah.
Okay, just give an example. I'm not familiar with all the schools, but like Holyoke High School, you have a principal, then there's a new dean, right?
Correct, and those are eligible expenses. Those do qualify when
Isn't that duplication of services? I mean, what does the dean do compared to the high school principal?
You want to elaborate on that?
Well, we have dean of students who are working with students, but any of those positions are eligible for net school spending. So, could we spend money in different? That doesn't count against us in our spending to the state. The only thing we can't count are rents, adult ed, and transportation.
All right. So why did we do any adult ed this year?
Well, adult ed. So we do this. We do have grants to pay for the teachers in adult ed, and actually, Holyoke Public Schools does kick in a little bit extra. We have a matching component of that grant. That component is not eligible for net school spending.
Right. So I mean, we have Career Point. I know a guy down in Boston, Gary Kaplan, who has JFY Networks, who actually a line item in the Massachusetts budget. It doesn't come out of the Boston Public School budget at all. I mean, why our job is to make sure that everyone's educated, but predominantly the children.
Yeah, you could. So I'm sorry, but you could. The city does have the ability to say, like, we're not going to fund. We don't want to fund adult ed. We don't want to fund your leases, which is what we did here last year. You could say there's a legal requirement on transportation for distance, but you could say we're not going to. We're more generous right now as a city than we need to be. I mean, those are actions that the city could take.
All right. My last two questions, because I know other people.
Yeah.
Are we over that 5% barrier?
Yeah, we're within the 5%.
This past year, we were within the 5%, so there was no penalty to the city, but the city did have to give the money to us.
And I'm sure that you're just as alarmed as I am hearing this. So what dramatic things are you going to do tomorrow so this doesn't happen again?
What doesn't happen? I'm sorry.
Not meeting net school spending. You guys don't seem as excited as I am, and so I'm trying to figure this out. Why aren't you as excited as I am? I mean, we should be making net school spending every year.
No, and part of it is we did try. I mean, can I just suggest that maybe we have a meeting at some point where we can collectively go through the information?
I'll file that order now.
Okay, I'd be happy to do that because.
For the document.
Yeah, we'll provide documentation. Yeah, yep. No.
To file an order, can't we just ask ask you?
You can.
I mean, I don't think we need to file an order, do we?
Here, what we'll do is Joe had a question too. So, Joe.
Thank you. I don't want to go too far, Mr. Chairman, but net school spending, Anthony, let me ask you a question about what you just said. Carryovers, and I understand carryovers. How does the school department carry money over from one year to the next year?
Whatever's available in the budget from the previous year historically has been given back to the school department, which, had that not happened, we probably would not have met net school spending all of those years.
I'm not questioning, and believe me, I'm trying to get on a, let's talk about education, how to pay for education, but we can't get off what is important to us, and that's the accountability of the budget process itself. What you're telling me is the total opposite of what we've been told in terms of state finance law and how things work. You're working under different rules, and I don't understand it. The city cannot carry over money, and Bellamy's probably going to correct me, and I'll call up Brian Smith, and he'll say I'm right. Is the carryovers are encumbered monies for something that was going to be expended for an expense in the fiscal year as it's ending, a foreseen expense that the invoice or the bill or the actual expenditure doesn't take place until after the new fiscal year begins. The rest of the money that's unencumbered on the city side of the budget becomes free cash, which we then can it's already appropriated, but reappropriate it into things like we're doing tonight, deficits within this year. It's the free cash from last year. So if the school department had money carried over that wasn't encumbered, in my mind, it should come back to the city to be reappropriated.
It hasn't historically.
Which, and I'm just trying to put you on the same loving playing field that we're on. And that's part of our problem here is because, and I like Halo. I'm probably going to vote for it because I think it's an important program. But essentially, I think, Anthony, you just told us that we're in jeopardy of net school spending because after the city council said, cut the Halo, monies, you didn't, and used net school spending monies to keep the rent. And now you want us to replace Halo rent, and it's still not going to be net school spending dollars.
Yeah, the problem is if the issue comes into if when we request funding every year, right, we come in front of the council, we're requesting we request at the minimum level, right, and so when we came that's happened historically. The school district has requested net school, a number that met net school spending. If a rent is cut, right, that digs in. If for example, we have to pay rent out of that money, or we have to absorb transportation costs out of that digs into net school spending. Historically, that's never been a problem because there was carryover, right? So then, if there was carryover and transportation budgets ran higher, not unemployment because that is, but transportation or rent costs ran higher, we would still meet net school spending because there was a carryover from year to year, and so that isn't an issue if the city council says we're going to cut 50, we're going to cut you 50,000, and you're going to have to absorb the rent. That's not an issue because there was carryover that would allow that to be covered. What the school department was doing historically is funding operational structural deficits from year to year with carryover. We don't have the same amount of carryover that the school department has had historically, and one of the reasons you'll see when we present our budget this year, we're going to have to cut more because we have, for the number of kids we're over. We're over budgeted. We're going to have to right size our budget. In the past, they didn't necessarily have to do that because they had carryover that was from year to year that they had built up over time. That doesn't exist in the same volume that did previously.
Do we agree, though, operational deficits are illegal in Massachusetts? We have an auditor that might want to agree with me? Okay. Except for snow removal. Or even that, you have to vote to carry it over. You can't have operational deficits.
Well, that's what this guy's been telling me since he arrived. You know, you can't have a structural deficit.
No. I mean, we have to address it.
Right.
And there's more than one. You know, there's some tough ways to address it.
Yeah,
but
and
we have to find a revenue or make some very difficult cuts.
We're going to stop everyone here. Councilor Leahy's filing an order to invite you guys back in. We're going to go over the whole budget. I want a copy of the budget and everything else, line item by line item, and go through everything. Also, with regards to not meeting net school spending, and if there's a letter, we'd like to see it from the state. Obviously, there was a letter that we've never seen before in our lifetime. With that, I'll withdraw my motion to deny because I want one answer that I think I need to know is there a lease?
Okay.
Or is it month to month? If it's month to month, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not voting for this. If it's a lease, then you're kind of stuck in the contract and you have to pay for it. But at the end of the year, we're not going to fund it again. Right. Or HCC can be very nice and forgive if they want. With that, I withdraw my motion to deny, and I'll make a motion to table it.
Table it, second.
That was seconded. All's in favor? All opposed?
Can I clarify one thing in the order?
Sure.
For myself, I really don't want to spend hours going through the budget line by line with you folks. I'm more interested in seeing a summary document that shows us how we are not meeting school spending and why.
Okay.
Seriously.
No, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. So with that, let's suspend the rules, go out of order, and take up 15 and 16 as a package.
So moved.
All in favor? All opposed? 15 is a request from free cash for $80,000 for rent at 57 Suffolk Street. 16 is an order that the council recommend the school department move from 4 floors to 2 floors to reduce their rent. So with that, I think we've beat this one up enough. We did cut 160 that represented rent. They could have taken it from anywhere else, but the understanding was if they made efforts to try and address the issue, they've come in, they've done it time and time again. They did put a request in for 160. For some reason, it was broken up into 80 and 80. I still don't understand why. The item number 16 is really asking that they reduce the footprint, which you said you have taken the steps to do.
We have, yep.
So that one's complied with.
So this is 80,000 for which month?
Finishing
for the rest of the
this
year. So it'll take them up to the end of the fiscal year.
3 months?
3 months, yeah.
April, May,
Take
June.
us through June.
Yeah.
I'll
And
make a
then
motion to approve that transfer.
So item 15 is a motion to approve, unless there's a question on it, or
We talked about this last
Yeah.
We did.
Joe, you have
I don't have a question, but I'd just like to publicly say I will absolutely vote for this and thank Dr. Zreich and Anthony for the hard work the school department has done on this issue with us.
Yeah, we want to acknowledge Todd McGee, who was on the committee as well.
And Todd McGee from the city council.
I'm kidding, Joe. They did.
No, I think it was our job to do, and I think the school department went above and beyond what is their scope of responsibility.
And our plan is to move on in July to consolidate to 2 floors. And then Kevin brought up the future plan. As you know, we're proposing new facilities, which would, in the future, allow the potential of the central office moving into an older facility that no longer exists as a school as we consolidate schools over the next, 5 years, if the plan moves forward.
So with that, the motion is to approve. Was it seconded?
Yes.
It was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So 15 was approved. 16
Motion
is
that
just a
16
motion
is complied
with. Let me pull that one up.
Effective July.
So the motion is that it was complied with. Was it seconded?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Matt gets those out of the way, and I somehow lost my list. There we go. So now we can go back, because I know Joe, this is going to get into what you were getting at, and we'll go all again on the same page. Items 12, 13, 14. Am I missing anyone? Is that it? All right, take them up as a package for discussion. All's in favor, all's opposed. So for at home, item 12 is financial request of $300,000 from charter school assessment to unemployment. 13 is financial request of $321,000 from charter school assessment to transportation. And then item 14 is a request of $400,000 from free cash to transportation. Are you sure we're not missing one? Okay. So with that, they're on the table for discussion.
Can I ask a technical question
Sure.
before we get into discussion? I've never seen a line in our budget, charter school assessment, to take money from.
Yes, and
Happy to explain that.
Okay.
The budget that you see includes everything except the state items, the assessments from the state, and this is one of the assessments that the state gives us. So those are added to the budget when we do the tax recap, but they're not in the in the budget book that you see. These are cherry sheet items, to use another term.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so with that, Joe, seeing how you were going on this path, I would like to turn back over to you to finish your comments or thought on it, and we'll go from there. Because I think we're all now on the same page, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
What I was leading towards, I think, going back to the line of thought, and it was more thought and questions, but is to get on a level playing field as to what the needs are of the school. But in order to be on that level playing field, Councilor Leahy's order, and because our good friends in the school committee can no longer review or have any oversight, can review, but don't have the oversight over the line item control, we need, and our auditor doesn't look at it, we need to look at it. I don't want to. I haven't looked at a line item school department budget since fiscal 92, and you don't want to know what that one looked like, Anthony, if you think it's bad now. We were under a financial control board then, and we literally, the voters of the city saved the city with some override votes. The point I'm trying to make is, I mean, and I do have questions on unemployment, is if, and I don't get charter assessment, Bellamy. I get what charter assessment is, but we don't appropriate it. So how do we transfer it?
We budget it based on what the state tells us to budget. So in June, we have the budget that the city council approves. Sometime during the summer, the state finishes its budget and tells us, thou shalt budget these 6 items of charges from state assessment. These are these cherry sheet items. At the same time, in the tax recap, they also give us a final amount of money, and we budget that as well, the receipts we're going to get for the state, the Chapter 70 money, for example, for the schools. So this is a charge that the state levies to us for charter schools. They tell us, we're going to charge you $12 million next year for charter schools. And that was roughly what they told us for fiscal 17. Yes. Then we find out, Anthony found out about a month ago, they're not charging us that much. They're charging us less. So there's extra money in the budget, roughly $600,000 or $700,000, whatever the total of these 2 transfers are, that we're saying, well, let's use it for the schools because it was budgeted as school money.
Yet we still won't meet net school spending.
And they're going to charge us for the students who go to charter school.
Right.
And then there's a formula where they reimburse us.
That's right.
Correct. In a different, yes.
So, and this, you said, is in the estimated cherry sheet that you show us, or it's put in afterwards?
Well,
I've never seen the line item, as Councilor Bacon said, on the cherry sheet or in any budget.
You've never seen that on the cherry sheet? Because the cherry sheet has a list of assessments, and there's half a dozen, and a list of revenues, and there's about a half a dozen. It's 2 pages. And, we have the process is the governor comes out with a list, then the House comes out with a list, and the Senate comes out with a list, and then finally there's a reconciliation, which is the final budget.
I get all that. It's a moving target. I get that. The cherry sheet, the budgets, everything's a moving target. But
can I just send you a copy?
To me, I've always looked at and I oppose to the whole funding mechanism for charter schools. I'll stop short of saying I'm opposed to charter schools, but I think you know what I'm saying. It's the way it's funded is just wrong.
Correct.
And to me, it was always a pass-through because the students go to charter school. The charter schools spend the money, not the city.
I think what happens is that when the state puts this together, they have an estimated number of students. And then what happened to us this year is not that many students went to charter schools, so they're charging us for the actual students who went, and there's a difference of roughly $700,000 in our favor, and we're very thankful for that difference. Believe me.
Yes. So this is an item. It's almost like moving an expense or a budget from one school department line item to another. The state, through their Chapter 70 formula, they give us $81 million, just about $81 million. And they say, this is what you have to spend on education to meet net school spending, but you have to spend about $12 million and give it to the charter schools. We're going to give you the 81, but you're going to end up giving the charter schools 12 million based on our estimate at this time. Throughout the year, they adjust that estimate on a quarterly basis. Unfortunately, I don't have access to see those numbers, but about a month ago, I asked Bellamy to see those numbers. And in fact, when I filed the end-of-year report, and the state had said we didn't meet net school spending, I couldn't understand why. I was like, what do you mean? I put these numbers together and I saw that we met net school spending. And they had said, well, the number that you used for charter assessments was too high. It was based on the state's estimate at the time. What our updated number now is less by about 700,000. So I sat with Bellamy, we went through it, and we confirmed, yes, if we do nothing with that, then we're going to fall short at least $700,000 for net school spending. So let's just transfer that to the school department account and use the money so that we don't end up in a position where we're short.
But again, the charter school assessment line item is in the school budget?
No, it's in the city budget.
Where in the city budget can I find it?
In the tax recap.
No, you said budget. This is the budget. I don't vote on the tax recap.
Well, the tax recap is the budget that includes everything, revenues and expenses. That budget only excludes expenses, excluding state charges. And I didn't create it, so I can't tell you why the state charges aren't in there. I would have put them in there, but
no.
But they're not. They historically have not been included in that document.
So, Bellamy, you're managing the charter school assessment account?
What do you mean managing it?
You said it's in the city side of the budget in the cherry sheet.
I put it in based on simply what the state tells us to do. I don't change it. It's whatever the final state budget is. Those amounts are put in the tax recap.
You don't change it, but we get a lot of money from the state. But someone has to watch over it.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And the auditor watches over, as I watch over every account in the budget. Yes.
Okay. So how much was the total amount in this line item at the beginning of this fiscal year?
I'm saying approximately $12 million.
Okay. How much of the $12 million was spent?
So far?
Well, it's almost May 1st. There's 2 months left.
Probably 9.
So there's $3 million left.
And we're probably going to spend 2 of it because we're going to be short about $800,000. Yeah.
Okay,
correct.
So there's an estimated surplus of close to $1 million.
Yes. Based on what's actually been charged to us. That is correct.
Okay. How much of the dollars out of this account that have been spent on charter school students have been reimbursed by the state because of the formula of first-year students, second-year students, and so on?
As near as I can tell, the revenue numbers are coming in on budget.
I don't understand.
That's call that revenue. The money the state gives us is revenue.
It's
right.
Projected.
Projected. Yeah, it's projected revenue. It's the money the states give us to pay for this is revenue, and I'm saying that's on budget.
and it's projected to be right around 1.4 million, I believe.
Yeah.
And who does the math on that?
It's also it's not an assessment on the cherry sheet; it's a receipt.
It's a receipt. It's revenue.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't see that in our accounts.
Who keeps the students that went to charter school? Who keeps the log that we should get X amount back?
The state
does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't keep the log.
You don't keep the log.
They report it. It's reported out. I mean, yeah. I mean, who knows what people are doing?
Just like they keep track of how much tax is paid on
Right.
rooms or on meals. They give us the money, and we have to hope they're right.
Right.
Can I make a suggestion? No. Yeah, I can. Mike's not here.
Sure, yeah.
He's probably listening at home, though. Why don't we just make the whole system a charter school? Let the state do it.
Oh, well, I don't know if we have
I'm not looking
time
for an
here
answer
tonight for this conference. No.
But do you see my point? I'm looking from a budget point. I have no clue.
Yeah.
38 years I've sat in this council, and I always thought I had an understanding of the school department, but I trusted the school committee. Right now, I have no clue of your budget.
Well, I mean, some of it is the complexities of money. The charter assessments, and to be honest, back to the original point, I think having even a workshop around what this, because it's complicated, so it's not layman's language, and it's and for a place like Holyoke where we have many kids going out, not just for charter, we have kids going out for choice. We have kids, but we have vocational expenditure because we send some kids out for vocational programs that we don't offer. We have choice kids coming in. It's complicated. It's something I would love to have a discussion. Okay. Yeah, we may bring somebody in to help also and to explain as well. What's that?
Handouts too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay, with that.
My final question, and then I'll back off and take a breath.
Okay.
Unemployment, Dr. Zreich. Councilor Jordan mentioned it, and I don't see our human resource director here. Bellamy, do we have a list of unemployment, the deficit? I believe the budget started with 450. There's a request for 300. Yes. And the 300 will bring it to 750, yes, which will take us through the entire year.
We don't know because we don't know what we're going to spend between now and the end of the year.
Well,
more people could come on. What we found is we were tracking it very nicely until January, and suddenly in February, 8 or 9 or 10 new cases came on.
okay.
That dated back to last June, but I guess people have they don't have to file right away. They can file months later and get paid. So we're watching it month to month at this point.
Okay. Do we have a list of positions and salaries of layoffs?
We have a list of positions and the amount of unemployment they're entitled to. I don't think the salary's on there, but it shows.
Well, we could get a list if we have that. We could pencil in their salary when they left the city.
Yes, I suppose. I mean, yeah.
Could you do that for us?
The schools would have to do it because they're almost all school employees. I don't have their salaries.
How many employees are we talking about?
78. The list I have is about 78.
78 employees.
Of which 73 are schools and 5 are city.
Every year we do this.
Right, and
73 school are unemployed. That's what we're saying.
Have unemployment. That doesn't. Yeah, and they're at some point. Now, some of these are people who started with unemployment before this fiscal year began, and then their unemployment ran out during this year, and some just started it and may go into next year. So it's kind of a peculiar set of numbers, but we have that. I have that list. Yes, that shows their affiliation, not their name. We're not allowed to give that name out except in executive session.
Get the list, name.
I have it right here.
Okay, so we'll file for an executive session.
Fine, because I've got the names.
Okay. Mike, Joe, are you done? Or
just, Doctor, can you give us any clue as to the increase in unemployment costs and what happened in January?
Well, some of it is from the beginning of the school year, and they didn't file. I mean, as you know, we did reduce the footprint at the central office, so we have fewer people working. There were layoffs last year, just in the administrative offices, 57 Suffolk. At the same time that we do have, we had a budget deficit last year of, in the end, it was about $4 million. So we did have to lay off. We have fewer staff as well, so some of those folks I'm sure appear on the list. And again, we have a deficit this year, so we're going to have to project that out, and we're going to have to shrink the footprint going into next year. And every year, if our revenues decline and our expenses go up, we're going to have to right size again the school district. So the trend that some of you have referred to has been a trend for multiple years. But we did do a lot of shifting in personnel last year. I do expect it to happen again for this upcoming school year as well.
Well, when you shift Suffolk Street for those reasons, understandable.
Yep.
Okay. Your budget for Suffolk Street should have decreased by the shifts.
Right. So
if we compare one budget to the next budget for personnel costs on Suffolk Street, we're going to see a much lower figure.
You should. For the next fiscal year, you mean? For the upcoming fiscal year. Yep.
Yeah, kind of ongoing to give us a trend.
But we're going to have to make cuts in other places as well for this upcoming year. We may make a few more cuts at Suffolk Street, and then we're going to have to make some cuts at the school in order to balance our budget.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mike, you're all set. Jimmy, you're next. Thank you. Linda, you're next after that.
I just wanted to confirm what I think I heard, because in the past, some of the concern around unemployment had been the seasonal, off for the summer, back on in the fall. And it sounds like these numbers that we're hearing this time are of a different nature, given the right sizing. So is it fair to say that seasonal issue has been resolved?
Yes.
Thank you.
So just to follow up, we're saying, go ahead.
I mean, I'd also be candid and say there's also people that start with us at the beginning of the year and just simply don't work out in schools as well, and we have to. And then those people may be people that are collecting unemployment in the middle of the year. We don't hit a home run with every hire, some of that is part of that number as well.
Right, but my understanding, Councilor McGivern was one that was a big spokesperson on that matter, was that people were routinely applying for unemployment in the summer when they're really a salaried person for a year, and that was a big habitual thing. And so I just wanted to confirm that process wasn't still happening on a regular basis.
We fixed that by we contracted out with UTCA, who's our unemployment advisor. We fixed that by sending out reasonable assurance letters. So from what I understand is historically we used to lay off people at the end of the school year, and then they'd collect unemployment throughout the summer, and then we'd rehire them back. Right. That is not the case. That is not the case at all. So what we started doing last year is just to be sure, we would, when certain people were laid off and our advisors allowed us to, we would provide them with a reasonable assurance letter saying, your position's been eliminated, but we can provide you reasonable assurance that, in September there may be a position. That disqualifies them from being able to collect in the summer. Should they not find another position in September, or we not hire them back, then they file and the unemployment would go back. So we 100% fixed that issue, and that is not the case. I think the majority of what's been going on is, we're a district in receivership now. There was a lot of unknown. There wasn't really a contract in place, and that, with the receiver coming in and the whole turnaround plan, that had an impact, I believe, on our unemployment account.
Thank you.
Bellamy, if you're going to, you have to go to the mic.
I want to talk about two things. One is just to explain why this happened to happen last year. And it had to do more with the circumstances of changes in the school department. Because we start the budget process in January, and we were given a set of numbers for the school, let's say in about February, by the then finance manager, who then left. And the schools were without a finance manager until Anthony started about May 1st.
April 4th, when we were almost finished with the budget process. So the decisions made by Dr. Reich and by Anthony to lay off people, which would have led to a much larger unemployment number, never happened because there was so much change going on and churn going on in the school. So we under-budgeted employment. Now, more important, we want to change that this year, and I'm telling you now because you'll see something different in the budget book. We want to take the school's unemployment budget out of the city budget and put it in the school budget, so that the basically the risk is on them. If they screw up and under budget unemployment, they're going to have to come up with money out of their own budget to pay for it, not out of the city. So we want to take all of the benefits accounts which are now part of the city accounts and put them in the school budget, and that's what you will see when we.
But is unemployment part of net school spending?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
It is.
And that is, not to beat on a dead horse, but that is part of the reason why sometimes we were at risk of not meeting net school spending. If we over-budgeted health insurance or we over-budgeted unemployment, which in fact last year we did. Last year we appropriated $800,000 in unemployment and we only spent $450,000, but the school department didn't even have a chance to spend that money. It was never an appropriation in our budget. Now, if this were ever to pan out, I'd be in a position where I could start regularly reviewing those accounts, and if there's an opportunity to say, hey, there's a $400,000 surplus here, Dr. Reich, how do you want to invest that? Do you want to hire, you want to hire more tutors? Do you want to invest in technology? Do you want to make some small repairs or give him options so that he can actually do something about it? We won't be in that position, but not having it in our books and not being able to see it, it's hard for me to put us in a position where we can reallocate funding.
When you lay people off, where do their benefits go? The money for their benefits?
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
The money not spent?
Well, Suffolk Street would be vacation time, health insurance, sick time.
So it depends. It depends on the type of employee, whether or not they're entitled to get paid out, and whether or not they have a contract.
If there's a surplus in those accounts, what do you do with that?
I can't do anything because it's on the city's books.
It's on the city has the savings.
I wish I could.
Schools.
Is that net school spending?
Yes.
So we're losing
Correct.
credit, and you're losing control.
That's right.
So
And
Yeah.
some of those issues that you talked about not meeting that. Part of the reason is the charter assessments that I can't see, the health insurance that I can't see, the unemployment that I can't see. If we budgeted too much in those accounts, there's no way of me knowing because I can't see them, and I can't even advise the city or advise the auditor that we're at risk.
And we can't see anything else. So it's sort of a blind situation.
I don't think it is. It'll be harder a little bit on our end, but I will bear the brunt of whatever work we have to do because we're gonna be the ones processing the bills now. Normally that's done by.
That's news coming out of tonight's meeting.
Yeah, we think it's good. We think
it's a win-win in my opinion.
In that regard.
Right now it's a lose-lose.
Because I wouldn't have to come back here either to ask for more money.
And hopefully you'll be in a situation where you have more than you need instead of less.
And we can do something about it.
But just to go on that, Bellamy, if the money is on our side and it's not spent, then it's carried over into our general
goes to
fund
free
next year.
cash.
If we now move it over onto their side, it doesn't go back to our general free cash.
Can I answer that?
Go ahead.
Extra.
If we're funded at the minimum requirement, it shouldn't matter. Right now it goes to free cash, but if that resulted in us not meeting net school spending, then the state would say you have to give it back.
Net school spending, in your view, twice out of a 5-year period.
Correct.
So in the other 3 years where we met net school spending and we had a surplus because we didn't touch it, it would stay on our side of the ledger and not yours.
That's correct.
So now the risk is we push it over onto your side of the ledger, you do all this stuff. If there is excess, it doesn't stay on our side of the ledger. It stays in yours.
If there's excess, then, if the budget pans out the way it is and there's no carryover, if there's excess, that means we're not meeting net school spending.
I get the hint of not meeting net school spending.
But you are correct.
There's that. But the risk is now on us that we lose what would normally stay on our side.
The access to that free cash, yes.
Except that, Mr. Chairman, for years we've been adding to this account, not getting anything back from it.
We have never seen anything in this account, which goes back to Joe's whole point is we have no clue what goes on.
But year after year, we have been transferring free cash into unemployment. We have not been realizing cash into free cash at the end of the year.
Because the whole point of laying off, not getting notices, now they're going through a UTCA, doing a contract, trying to avoid that issue. I get that. There's been abuse on that side. But if we follow the procedure, there is a potential now that it might go over on their side and not the general fund. That's my whole point. Okay, then
potential.
Take it all. That's the comment here. I'm fine. You won't get my vote on that one. But anyway, we'll move on.
It all.
It's numbers. I get it.
I just had
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, it's a quick question.
We need the sheets so we can see the.
So, Doctor, you stated next year that the numbers will probably be a little bit down in unemployment. You're still going to have something.
I can't say that with certainty because I do see that we're going to have a deficit, and we're working on our budget now, and we're going to have to make some personnel shifts. Again. So I can't say that right now. We're going to have to now that as Bellamy was saying. Now that Anthony's here, we have a better sense. We can budget more. More thoughtfully around on what we and our budget process is also ramped up a little earlier now because last year I didn't have somebody for a period of time, so we have a better sense of what the impact might be on employees, and so we have to budget accordingly.
And the other thing is that you stated with that letter or whatever you sent out, there would be less seasonal unemployment,
Yeah, but that started we did that this past year.
For seasonal employees, we actually give them, when they get hired, a letter that says they're seasonal, which disqualifies them from being able to collect. Yeah. So the other issue I was referring to was teachers that were getting non-renewed, and then we were hiring them back. Those weren't really seasonal. Those were sending reasonable assurance letters, which 90% of the time they either they find jobs in other districts, and then
they won't collect it all during.
So they don't collect during the summer.
Okay, and the other quick question I had is if this didn't happen with the charter school assessment and we didn't get this windfall of money, you were right on target with the number of students with the state. Well, where would this money? How would you cover these expenses?
I would have been seeking additional appropriation. I don't know how, but I would have.
That's a lot of
asked
money.
the city council.
Take it out of, we'd have to freeze our budget.
$700,000 is a lot of money.
Well, transportation is different because unemployment, but transportation was a known deficit.
Right. So you knew
at the beginning of the year, and so we were gonna. I mean, the plan all along was to come back to the city council. We have absorbed some of the deficit because it's actually bigger than what the ask is. So we've absorbed some of it. But we knew the plan all along was we were very clear last year when we came that this is the second year in a row that's happened because when I arrived that also was an issue in the budget I inherited that there was a known deficit there was another known deficit this year. We cannot submit a budget this year that doesn't have transportation fully funded, because otherwise we're going to be back in this same place, and or we're going to have to be pulling money from within the district, and that is not, back to the not subject, that isn't money that can be used for net school spending.
So this, more than likely, this amount with the school transportation this coming year will be.
Yeah. This coming year, we're looking. The overall appropriation that was submitted so far puts us right at level funding, but funds transportation fully. And I know that's a little hard to understand because it's a significant increase, but we really are. We were faced with a $4 to $5 million deficit based on the budget, the governor's budget outlook. Our revenue only went up is only going to be going up 0.2%, $169,000 for next year. But health insurance is expected to go up more than 9%. Our charter assessments have gone up at least $700,000 based on the governor's outlook.
Salaries for staff.
Salaries for staff. Yeah. When you factor in, we're only getting $169,000 in additional revenue, but our expenses are going up by way more than that. So we're forced to make reductions by about like $4 to $5 million to make sure we live within that minimum requirement.
Mr. Chairman, it's turning into a free-for-all.
We have met with them a couple of times, and they have met with the commissioner, and
they met with the governor. They did meet with the governor about Holyoke schools. And
this is just a very similar situation that all the gateway communities are in: flat revenue, rising healthcare costs, rising charter assessment costs. It really does put a strain and forces you to it forces you to make terrible decisions.
And the difference is in other communities, right, that have the ability to pay, they can fund above net school spending. So as costs and expenditures go up, the municipality can cover beyond the minimum net school spending, and so you can see increases of 5% or 3%. I mean, in a city like Holyoke, it's no different than some of the other gateways. Our ability to do, I know the ability of the city to do that it doesn't exist.
All right. So with that, before us are the orders. You have the 300 from assessment to unemployment, which we've covered. Then you have the 321 from assessment, charter school assessment, to transportation. But then you have a free cash request for transportation. I'm assuming the 400,000 for free cash is being, in essence, sent to a draw.
But that's what we're asking.
Oh, you want both?
They're both.
You need a total of.
We were cut 800, and I think that would give us back 721. I believe is the number.
So, all right, and that's where we're looking to get clarification.
Can I?
So hold on.
Sorry.
So, looking for 12 to be approved, 13 to be approved, and the free cash of 400,000 to be approved. But then, Bellamy, what are you saying?
Leave to withdraw item 19 and 20.
Which then those would have been used to pay for the unemployment.
If that was before we found the charter school assessment money, we get $300,000 for unemployment. But then along came this gift from heaven, and so we withdraw.
All right, so those 19 and 20 are going to be denied in simple leave to withdraw because you're using money to cover unemployment from another avenue.
Correct.
So now to the real issue of transportation. What are you underfunded by? 21?
Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. If we're $700,000 in this extra money, the assessment,
charter assessment,
right? But there's still $89,000 left sitting there. We've got 321 and 300 coming out of that.
620.
621. Mm-hmm. right? Okay, so that leaves $79,000, right? Still there, unaccounted for.
I honestly don't know exactly how much is in the city's account.
It's exactly the total of these two numbers.
Okay, so that's the total. The numbers that are in front of you are the total that we're projecting.
Okay, I thought I had heard
to have a
700,000
surplus.
earlier.
I estimated 700,000. It's really 621 or whatever.
621 is what's on the agenda.
Oh, that.
And the reason is because we saved something like $1 billion.
He's right. 700.
Yeah.
21 is for
No, no, from charter school, 300 and 321.
That's six.
Right, but that's the money that's available from the charter school.
Yeah, 621.
621.
But
That
for
was the
busing-
question.
Oh, okay, but busing total.
He
is
was
720.
thinking there was more
Okay,
that
okay.
hadn't gone to transportation.
No, Mike.
That was
it's,
us.
It's
And
you
it's
got
the
it?
real number.
Got it. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So back to my question, which is, we're short 721,000 for busing.
Correct.
Yeah, we entered the budget season short 800,000 when we came
Presented
to
in June.
presented
May.
in June. It was, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So he cut it back
We
then.
didn't cut it.
Bellamy, you want to tell us about this?
Just so you understand, we go back a year before when the schools came to us, not these guys, but their predecessors, and they had this huge increase in transportation. And we said, well, gee, have you gone out to bid to get it better? No, we didn't do that. Have you tried to change any routes? No, you haven't done that. Well, what have you done? Not a goddamn thing. So we cut the budget $400,000 to put pressure on them to do something. Did they do anything? No. Anthony had to clean up their mess when he got there. So this year when they came in, we said, you want what? $1.5 million more? So we cut it $800,000 to put pressure on them. And this year they actually did something. They did, to me, they did the best piece of analytical work I've seen in the city in 2 years, that study of transportation. And I really think you guys did a great job. They couldn't solve the problem, the $800,000 this year, but they know how to solve it next year, and they're going to do a wonderful job at it. You're better anyway.
I find that funny because it took me all the way up to 10 of 9 to finally get that answer. It's the same thing the city council did. We cut you $160 for rent. We cut you $40 for Halo to say no and force the hand to finally get things done. We got beat up. We got yelled at by people. We got the nasty emails, but yet, the same thing that was done behind closed doors, nothing said. Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
We came, but it wasn't behind. We came here.
Whoa. No, I understand you came and told us, but now the real story is there. It was to force hands and finally get things under control. Same thing we did as a group. Now, I'm just making a point that you know. Anyways, I think my point has been made. Go ahead, Mike.
Just a question to the chair. So, did I hear correctly, 19 is going to be denied?
19 and 20 are given leave to withdraw, which is denied because that's how we have to do it. Which is in Bellamy, if we approve the 400,000, because I don't have the spreadsheet, I left it at home, what would free cash be? You just passed, we're passing the 80, we're passing the 4, we're passing now the 400.
It'll be down close to 10, 15, $20,000.
20,000.
Because when I look at everything that I've sent you in free cash, if you pass all of it, and I don't think there's anything outstanding except what's on here, we're down to about $15,000, $20,000.
Yeah, I had like 24, I think, when I mentioned the meeting. It was like 24 or 34.
24 or 34. But
Yeah. So it's
We're very close to done with free cash, yes.
okay. That's what I'm confirming. Anthony.
I'd like to just speak to some of the work that we have done on transportation because, Bellamy pointed out that there was an analysis done. He probably made some promises that I just want to give some clarity around what we have done. We have hired a consultant to come in and review not just transportation, but to do an analysis on our special education. And a small part of that presentation was to look at the special ed transportation costs. What that consultant revealed is that we have a very high population of individuals with disabilities, many of them who require transportation. Out of the $7.5 million transportation budget, 5.4 of it is to transport students with disabilities, which are required in their IEP. Last year, before I had gotten here, the district had hired a consultant to look at tiering and start times, but their focus was on regular busing. Well, after reviewing that analysis, we should not have looked at, it doesn't matter what happens with regular busing because special ed is where we're spending the majority of that money. It is a systematic issue that we will be addressing. I mean, our SPED referrals in kindergarten went from 21% last year to 10% this year, and that is directly attributable to a change that we made as a district under Dr. Zreich's leadership. So the next steps, this consultant that we hired, they pretty much gave us an area where we need to look at. They said, hey, you could do whatever on regular ed, but this is what you need to focus on, and here are some options. So we are in the process of you know, I spoke to him today. He will be providing different scenarios, but with the focus this time is going to be on special education. And I'm confident that, you know, and I'm hopeful that there will be some savings. What I can do and what I can promise, I can't really predict the future and promise you that there's going to be savings, but I will promise you that if there is a possibility to be savings, we are going to be exploring those possibilities. And I'd be happy to report out. We did put together a transportation review committee. Todd sits on that along with Niles and a couple of other people. And you know, the first meeting we had was very informational. We reviewed that analysis that was done, and I'm waiting for this consultant and this routing specialist to put together different scenarios to then schedule another meeting so that we can review their findings and hopefully save some money.
Thank you. So with that, item 12, $300,000 from charter assessment to unemployment. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve it.
Motion is
Second.
to approve. It was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Item 13, $321,000 from charter assessment to transportation. Is there a motion?
I don't want to, but I'll make a motion to approve it.
Motion is to
Second.
approve. It was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That was passed. The last one is from free cash, $400,000 to transportation. Is there a motion on this one?
I'd like to table this till we can review the economics in the sheets.
What is this due by?
We wouldn't have money to pay for June transportation
So we
bills.
have time.
There's time. Good.
To the chair. Oh. The chair. Linda, was that to review what?
Well, they're going to come in and we're going to go over those net school spending issues and the other things that we talked about earlier so that we have a better understanding. And I would like to have that before I reduce our free cash to zero.
Anthony says, I understand you're learning what we already know when it comes to special ed and the cost and the enormous requirements that come with special ed in the city of Holyoke. And we not tonight, but could talk about that forever. Isn't this part of the reason we're in receivership? The money we've been spending on items like this that can't go into education, direct education of our mainstream students with, I don't care about the test scores as much as the state does. But we've struggled with this for years. I just have to say this, Mr. Chairman, it's got nothing to do with tonight, and you can shut me up if you want. But
Go ahead, Joe.
isn't this the whole problem?
I mean,
you said, Dr. Zreich, when you came in, and you've gained a lot of respect in this room, that you have to do what wasn't done with the same money or less.
Yeah, so the challenge with this, the money for transportation is, again, we can't, that's money that's not subject to...
We've always been challenged with it, though. If we didn't have this $400,000 year after year after year, we could put it into
that's right. And
that school spending.
What I would like to do, and this is the city's purview, is transportation, right? It is the city's purview. And so I think that's why we did want to, I mean, we need to have a healthy dialogue, and this is there's nothing we're hiding. There's nothing I would hide. Show you all the numbers around transportation. It has gone, the numbers are astronomical, especially around special education. And I do think having a robust discussion with, and I know Todd's been part of a committee that started to meet, but this is just the start of looking at this, because I do think we have to get a handle. And there could be some difficult decisions that have to be made around. We're going out to bid for FY19, right? So this next year is going to be critical for us as we look at our transportation numbers. I do think, I'll tell you right now, I pledge tonight that we'll make a commitment to really work at this. I can't make promises because there's certain things that we are obligated to do by law in terms of distance for where kids live. IEPs, the transportation that are in IEPs that can't necessarily be changed, and kids deserve to have that. We transport children out of district too.
What about the homeless people? They're being sent.
Yep. So homeless transportation. We have the highest percentage of homeless in the state of Massachusetts for any district in the state. We get partial reimbursement, but we don't get full reimbursement for that, and that comes out of our transportation budget. Am I right about that? It comes out of transportation as well?
Yes.
Yeah, so all of those things, but I do think having a transparent discussion. We also happen to transport kids. We're more generous than what the law requires, the state law requires. That's been a historical thing in this city. I'm also, that's a difficult conversation because we have many families that don't have transportation, and it's hard for them to get to school. But I think it's a city, this is a discussion that's not, I'm not an expert on transportation, but I do think city councilors, I think school committee members, I think the public should have that information. And
need to know.
Like we've done with the central office, I think there needs to be a healthy look at this as a city, because otherwise, to your point, Mr. McGinn, the numbers keep growing in transportation, and it does saddle the city with a huge bill.
So I just feel at a minimum we have to understand it better before we simply pay out another $400,000.
I'll second your motion to table it because we still do have time. You just approved 321 to pay expenses up until a certain time frame, and then this would be there. To me, I'm going to have to go back to what Kevin said. You came, you told us there was an expense to be paid. Mayor said, not paying it. Now, I understand now the new argument is, well, we're trying to put their foot to the fire to make some cuts and stuff. He didn't say that. He said, just not paying it. Which then, when we did our budget, we're hoping that this kind of money is available for other things. Now it's not. It's going to go right back to it. Well, you got to win me over to get that money. To me, approving this now will get us down to roughly about $20,000 for free cash. It's not even May. I still don't even know. Bellamy, do you know what the budget is or issues might be for snow?
Yeah. I'm waiting for the final numbers. We need $250,000, and I have that transfer ready to go once Mike tells me the actual number, because the numbers don't factor in the last snowstorm. We're trying to get those.
Right.
There was one more snowstorm after we had it all figured out, so we're going to have to move $250,000, but we have it elsewhere in the budget. It's not coming from free cash. It's covered.
Really? That's
you'll be fine from 19 and 20?
Yeah, that's kind of where it's coming from. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, all right.
Yeah, can I just respond to that? I just want to go back and say we came very clearly.
No, you did.
I just want to be clear. I mean, that wasn't something that we did not make any promises about being able to absorb that amount of money in the budget. We knew we couldn't absorb it because we would not make net school spending. That's a much bigger chunk of money, $800,000, than the $50,000 for a lease, as an example. And I did not make any pledges that we were going to be able to do that. We knew our budget was tight going into FY17. And so I feel we were very transparent in saying that this was an issue.
I recall you saying exactly that.
All right. I just want to be clear about that. I understand the concern.
Our issue isn't with you in that regard.
Okay. All right. And I understand.
It's a number that isn't being addressed. I mean, Councilor Leahy was here in front of then Mr. DuPont, going over the same numbers and saying, what the biggest problem is, we know these problems are there. We're begging the state for help because we're taking care of the homeless. We're taking care of all these different things that other communities don't. So it's not your fault. It's not that fault. It's been here. But the problem is we just keep kicking it down the road and we're not coming up with an ultimate solution. So do we force something back on the state? What do we have to do to address it?
Right, if I may.
Yeah.
But in fairness, you are the first people who have done an analysis of it and then are coming to us this year in the budget with a plan. So that has a lot of value. I do have a question that I'm hoping you can address because you just said we had the highest number of homeless. The governor proudly announced that we no longer had that. So I'm interested to understand.
That's not true.
When
the governor announced we no longer have homeless in hotels. We have at least 7 shelters in Holyoke of family shelters of homeless that come into the city of Holyoke.
Excuse me, I didn't interrupt you tonight. Thank you.
Let's go. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Linda, but you're speaking for the governor. And
what I'm saying is that is what was publicized. I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying it was publicized on the news and gave that impression. So tonight what I'm hearing you say is that really hasn't changed. And I think it's important for us to understand if that really hasn't changed, because that was the impression that was put to the public. And if we do have all these shelters and if we do have all these living arrangements in the city, as city councilors, we also need to know what they are and where they are, because it may be known to 1 or 2 of the councilors, but it is not generally known.
So I'll just respond by saying I know that we are between 10 and 15% of our student population is homeless, and that number does. But that was for last year yearly. That is the highest rate for last year of any district was Holyoke percentage for a school system. Yeah. And they may not all be living in hotels now because the hotels have been, some of them have been torn down, but they are qualified homeless if they're living with a relative, they've lost their home, or they're living in a shelter of some kind. So that is a factor certainly for us. I mean, to answer your question about what you can do, I mean, I'm happy to share some articles. There are gateway cities right now who are really pushing back on the formula for funding education. I mean, this is it is. I know Brockton is having that conversation right now. I know that Worcester has been having that conversation about the foundation formula for funding education, which is very, very. You spoke to Councilor McGivern a little bit of it today. It's a complicated formula, but again, our ability as a school district to keep up with expenses is we just. It's not just Holyoke. It is a lot of the cities that are in and we're not getting fully funded for charter reimbursement. And that is part of some of the recommendations that the review committee made when they looked at the formula that have not been taken into account yet. And so, I'd like to say that it's just us, but it's not just us, and we do, to Mr. McGee's comments. I mean, there is a burden that cities like Holyoke do, face, given the population of students that we serve, and they deserve to be served. It's just the expenses are high.
Thank you.
All right. So with that, there was a motion to table. Yeah, Joe.
I apologize to Councilor Bacon. I wasn't trying to interrupt you, Linda.
Thank you.
But the family shelters are run by, a lot of them run by the Housing Allowance Program. And I know some of them because of my real job and things I do out in the field. But they're amazing how fast they are growing, and not just in Holyoke, but Dominic Sarno has had some discussions about this with Springfield.
It's a pretty scary dynamic.
And it's not hotels, which is better, in
some ways.
But when we're held accountable to a family who was given an apartment now it's what it's called a shelter, it puts financial burdens on budgets like the school.
Well, right, and I think the bigger question is once a person is in an apartment, how long do they remain homeless?
They're entitled, at least for transportation purposes, to be categorized as homeless through the end of the school year.
For one
So if they find permanent placement during the school year, they're still entitled to, let's say they find a home that happens to be not within walking distance, we have to go pick them up and bring them to school for the rest of the year.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so motion is to table. Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. This then goes to 7. Well, let's just do 19 and 20 because people are here. So 19 and 20, suspend rules, take up as a package.
So, all in favor?
Make a motion to deny because Bellamy said this is the money they'll need for that. So motion is to deny those. No debate?
No.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? So those are denied. Back to 17.
Make a motion to take up item 17.
All those in favor? All opposed? Transfer $4,639 from Engineering Assistant Superintendent to Admin Vacation Buyback, Building OT, Automotive OT. So Bellamy, are you here for 17, 18? You're all set now. Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. You're going to be at the meeting tomorrow night at school? Westwood State? Unfortunately, I don't have 17 with me, so I'm on the foundation.
Do you have 18? Well, it's 18 is.
That wouldn't be Bellamy. That's DPW and the engineer.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Just 17. 17. So table till we. Or transfers need to cover payroll weeks ending April 1st to April 8th.
Oh, for overtime and buyback?
For overtime and buyback?
Mm.
Yeah, it says transfers need to cover payroll weeks ending 4/01 and 4/8. So 1 week. Yeah.
He said overtime automotive, overtime buildings, and a vacation buyback.
Standard. That's a standard.
So, and it's an internal transfer.
Well, do me one favor. I mean, I'll make a motion to approve pending. You can follow up with an email tomorrow saying, yeah, this is standard. I saw it. Okay. I think it is, but I just want to make sure because if you don't have it.
I'll second that.
All right, so motion is to approve pending Bellamy just confirming that it's a standard request. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And then with regards to 18, I'm not surprised. I've been asking for this one. 2 week. Remember I filed this on February 21st saying that they have 2 weeks to respond. 2 weeks has been hence gone. And now they still haven't shown up with the info. So how do we force people to do something, Joe? When they, yeah.
You're saying no instead of yes.
This one I know they did. What do you guys think? Well, we're going to table it.
Table?
Yeah, table. McCall? Ryan, send them another notice, or?
Is it something, do they have a written report that they can just send over?
Yeah, they do. All right, motion to table. And we'll do another follow-up.
Maybe
3
you can
strikes.
ask Ryan to reach out and ask him to just send over the written report.
Well, hold on. Let's do this. Motion is to table. All those in favor? All opposed? And the other ones were. And that is it.
Question? Quick question.
Hold on. Yep.
In my file, I have two sort of generic orders that have to do with bond language that the city council needed to approve so that we can bond in June. And I haven't gotten anything back from the council, but maybe you approved it, and it just was never submitted back to me.
Is it short term or long term?
It's long. Yeah, it's just you don't know what I'm talking about, Todd, right? Because they were submitted under your name, so they. I'll send. Let me send you.
A lot of stuff gets submitted under my
I
name
know.
that I don't get notice about.
Aha. No, this is just generic language. Says, yeah, the treasurer is authorized to do X, Y, and Z with regard to new bonds.
Talk to the treasurer?
Treasurer's out.
Or the clerk.
Treasurer's out. She's had surgery, so. But I found that in the file when I was getting ready for tonight.
All right.
You don't know what I'm talking
I'll
about.
look it up and we'll put it on the next agenda. I'm sure it's there.
Yeah.
But I know nothing in the sense of the treasurer asked me to fossil. Like you've emailed me and said, Todd, I'm going to put this on here or something like that. I have no communication.
Okay.
Is my point.
I'll send you a copy just so you know what I'm talking about. Okay, good.
All right, so